Hello everyone. This is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto stepped out of Minato's shadow, and became a legend with Itachi and Kushina, Part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. When Naruto got home from his eventful time with Uchiha Itachi, he found his mother present at the kitchen, his father as well. He had returned a bit late as he had spent more time than he had anticipated, throwing kunais and shurikens around with Itachi. That had been somewhat of a challenge. Though, nothing heavy was done to actually tire him out. It was a strange feeling seeing both his parents happily preparing the dinner in the kitchen. Naruto couldn't make what they were saying when he returned, but they seemed happy to be finally doing something like this once again. Although he didn't keep track of things, Naruto could agree that they haven't been doing things like these in months. The Kyuubi rampage had really changed so many things, not just for him, but for everyone living inside of the village hidden in leaves. Naruto, Kushina said happily. There was none of that nervousness that she usually displayed when facing him. Perhaps she was just happy to be in that kind of mood and space. When emotions ran high, other things tended not to matter. Emotions could be like a drug. Or so he was told by Izumi. Kushina smiled at her son. He was here. She had been worried that he wouldn't show up for dinner. Time had been ticking away and it had been late already. But Minato had said they shouldn't worry. Perhaps what worried Kushina even more was Minato, his absence to the precise. But she was happy. She was glad that he had showed up as he promised. It would have been a disappointment and Naruto would have been shattered if something like that happened. It would have led to broken bonds and the once happy relationship they were trying to rebuild would shatter and nothing would change. They would only be parents in name and nothing more. I'm so glad you made it, Kushina said happily. Minato nodded with a small smile, just beside his wife. I was beginning to worry, he said. Well, that hardly matters anyway. Come on and join us. Naruto smiled at his parents, waving his hands. I'd rather not. You know I have no skills when it comes to cooking, the redhead said. I'll just watch. You won't learn anything if you don't make the effort. Now come on and try it with us, Kushina said with a smile. We are here. You won't mess up the dinner. And even if we do mess it up, we will still eat it together. Like a family. There was the firmness in her tone. She was obviously not requesting him to join but telling him. That was the mother Naruto knew. His mother was a fierce woman who didn't show nervousness to a child. The mother he'd grown to know and love was one who was stubborn, strong-willed and didn't back down so easily. She was persistent and somewhat forceful. Yet, even if this was the mother he'd grown to know, Naruto didn't feel happy. There was a strange feeling inside of him. It was truly strange. He wanted nothing more than to put a hand on his chest just to feel the rate of his heartbeat. He should have been happy that his parents had made the time and were putting on an effort for them to restart as a family like they once were. But Naruto wasn't all that happy. It was strange. Perhaps a part of him had expected his father to be caught up in the office doing his work as the Yondaime Hokage. It was also possible that deep inside of him, he really didn't want things to go back to the way they were. If they did, he would lose the desire that has led him into what he was today. Even with all those thoughts, Naruto smiled at his parents. Sure. Why not? Minato waited until he got his hands wet before starting with the casual talk. So, how was your day? Yes, that kind of casual talk. The strange feeling didn't go away. It was still lingering in his thoughts and at the tip of his tongue. He didn't want to be responding to such questions. Perhaps he would have been happy to respond to such questions months ago, but he had grown. He wasn't that spoiled brat he had been back then. Well, perhaps he was still a little spoiled, but this wasn't the sort of talk he wanted to have. Either way, the two were here. His parents had made the effort to change things. That was something to smile about. It was a good change. He didn't want to end up resenting his parents. He doubted things would have come to that point though. Swallowing his thoughts, Naruto just smiled, and responded to his father. It was interesting, he said. That is good, Minato said. Meet anyone new. I wouldn't say new, but I did end up meeting with Uchiha Itachi. Interesting person. Naruto said. The last words had been said to himself more than to anyone. Uchiha Itachi. Huh. Minato was rather subdued about it. He seemed to be pondering about something. His mother didn't have thoughts Minato was having. She seemed happy about it. Excited even. Makoto's older son, Kushina said happily. This is a good thing. I hope you strike a friendship with him. His mother tells me he is a sweet child who loves his brother dearly. That was new. Naruto hadn't thought of Itachi with sweet and love. There had been none of those thoughts. Well, his mother's smile was explained by that, but his father's reaction was questionable. Naruto didn't question though. There was nothing that was pushing him to ask. If there was something, he would eventually know. Itachi wasn't going to go anywhere, neither was he going anywhere. Speaking of younger siblings, where is Karen? Upstairs with Azumi-chan, Kushina said pleasantly. I couldn't fix dinner with her on my back. Naruto nodded. I will go check up on her, the redhead said to his parents. Naruto turned away from his parents, who were smiling behind his back. They were merely happy that he had made that choice. It has been long since he last went into the presence of his younger sister. Since her birth, he'd only seen her in a handful of times that he was with her, and over the past 3 months, there had been none of those times and the parents had been worried that perhaps their elder child resented his younger sister. Karen wasn't in his parents' room. Naruto went to check at the other living room in the house. When he found the place, Azumi was alone, watching TV, with the child silently on her lap. Naruto-sama, Azumi said, acknowledging the redhead's presence. Have you come for Karen-chan? Naruto nodded. She is sleeping at the moment, but you can stare at her. I'm sure you have missed how she looks like, Azumi said, inviting Naruto. The redhead silently walked closer to the two. The blonde hair that just reminded him of his father, and the cute face, it was just as he remembered. His little sister, the innocent little girl who didn't know anything. She was innocent in all these. His sister was innocent. Naruto stared at Karen for a full minute before straightening himself up. All done. Naruto nodded. A cute little thing, isn't she? The redhead said in thought. He then shook his head. I better go back downstairs. You should just move in here. You hardly go home anyway. I'll consider that, Azumi said in thought. Take Karen-chan with you. Your mother wanted her to be there when you have your dinner. She said she wanted to have everyone together at the dinner table. Naruto stared at Azumi for a few moments. He hadn't held his sister since that day. Since the day his mother was allowed to leave the house. He was hesitant to do it again. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He just didn't know what to do. His sister was his sister. He didn't hate her. Sighing, Naruto spoke. Sure, why not? Azumi handed him his little sister. The movements made the baby stir up before her eyes slowly opened. He remembered those eyes. They were the same as both his parents. There was no recognition in those innocent eyes. She just stared at him. Naruto, is something wrong? Azumi asked, seeing the blank look on the redhead's face. Naruto shook his head. There was nothing wrong. He smiled warmly at the little girl in his hands. Hello, Namikaze Karen, I am your older brother, Uzumaki Naruto. I hope you and I will get along when you learn to understand things around you. 2 days later. Shocked, surprised, amazed, and awed, Itachi didn't know if it was really possible to experience all emotions simultaneously, as he had a hard time trying to select the one true emotion he should express over the situation that had just occurred before his very eyes. Naruto had said that he didn't know ninjutsu because he hadn't tried learning it before. What he had been doing was learning to control his elemental chakra natures. He hadn't said which he said were his elements, but Itachi already knew there was fire due to what his father had informed him. What had surprised Itachi was that Naruto had actually executed the fireball jutsu on first time trying. The redhead had him explain to him how to expel the flames from his mouth, what was needed, and how to regulate chakra inside his system. The hand signs were caught in quickly, and then the redhead had released a fireball that was slightly bigger than his. What made it shocking was the fact that it had burned down to crisp the tree that had stood in its path. Perhaps his father had been right. The flames Naruto used were not normal flames. Naruto looked at his hands, and then looked up. As I suspected, he said to himself. Showing no means of satisfaction over his perfect execution of the jutsu he'd just been taught 2 minutes ago. Itachi tilted his head to the side. What? You don't even seem excited by this. I know I was happy to learn the jutsu and execute it to the point that made my father very proud. Considering that making him feel proud is a little difficult. Anyone would be excited and take joy in this magnificent achievement. Itachi was positive that even his father would show surprise when he does tell him what the redhead had done today. The man usually showed no surprise when he told him of what Naruto had been up to. But he was sure that the man would show surprise in this one. Perhaps he would even grow much more interested in Naruto. Possibly. Naruto turned to face Itachi with a blank look on his face. For him, there was no one who would praise him for doing something so wonderful. His parents were out of the question, not because they wouldn't be happy for him, but because they didn't even know he trained himself to blood sweat and he wasn't all that too keen to tell them about how his training was going. This is the result of hard work. I'm not a genius like you. To make this a reality, I had to work hard, go through pain to achieve this. I should be excited, but, in me, there is a little voice that merely said anything less would have been a disappointment. The redhead shook his head. It is right to be excited over this. Nevertheless, this is merely what I expect of myself. You have high expectations, Itachi said. Though, he would agree that hard does pay off. And even if he was a genius, it took hard work to get where he was. He didn't simply say I'm a genius, I can do all. No, he acknowledged that he wasn't like the others and took advantage of it to propel himself further. Yes, Naruto said. I have been learning how to control my chakra and the fire element for a long time. Itachi just raised a brow at that, but didn't question anything. The harder part with ninjutsu isn't hand seals, but manipulating the chakra inside of you. When you can effortlessly control your chakra, it is quite simple to give it form. Itachi had to sit down for this to be able to think it through. Naruto may show little interest in many things, but when it came to fighting, he was really knowledgeable. Itachi was surprised that he was even learning something from the redhead. It had been unexpected, but here he was. It was truly a surprise. The person before him was the one who literally practiced the phrase, ignorance is bliss. Are you saying that when you execute ninjutsu, you're merely giving your chakra form? Naruto nodded. Yes, that is what I'm saying. To use ninjutsu, you must have chakra. I learned how to control my chakra. The second step was elemental chakra. That led to the question, what was my natural affinity? Fire was amongst the fold. And so, I learned how to convert my chakra into fire and freely control it. The third step is giving that fire a form. In your language you can simply say learning ninjutsu. Itachi stared at Naruto. That was truly a unique way to view things. Well, at least as far as the Uchiha was concerned. There could be someone who viewed things in the same light. But given that explanation, he could understand why the redhead was able to execute the jutsu that way. He already had everything that was needed to execute the jutsu. The difficulties people experience when learning jutsu stem from being unable to fully control chakra and the element in which the jutsu is based. When he learned the fireball, he hadn't done as Naruto did it. He learned to perfect it over time. The reason was simple. Although the fire was a natural affinity for Uchiha, he'd never learned to control the fire element. Why do you go about that way? Because I want to create new things. The shape that I will give to my chakra has to be different. All great shinobi have had something unique about them. I want that something as well. That was an honest response from Naruto. Really, he wanted to achieve great things in his life. He didn't want to just live in the shadow of his father. If he didn't do new things and just copied his father, he would always be associated with the shadow of the man. To step away from that shadow and simply be Uzumaki Naruto, he had to create something special to him. He had to be Uzumaki Naruto. Itachi looked up into the sky for a moment before looking back at Naruto. Perhaps father was right. Associating with you will be good for me, he said. It was evident that he would surely learn something from the redhead. It wasn't bad. Naruto acted as if he didn't hear Itachi as he sat down as well. He had things to keep to himself. He wasn't going to show Itachi everything. His clones would still do training in their secret place. Have you been approached by Danzo? Itachi raised an eyebrow. Not at the question itself but by the tone Naruto used. The redhead was speaking as if he knew that he was familiar with the war hawk. Itachi could only assume the man had made a move on the redhead as well. Unsurprising. Yes, Itachi said. Interesting as his offer was, my father warned him against him. Do you really know what is going on? Naruto shook his head. I just know he is bad. At least that is what I was told. He went silent for a moment, thinking of what the War Hawk did that day. Never again would he be forced to feel so powerless to do something. Never again. What do you know? Why do you want to know? Because I want to know. I want to know things that I want to know, and I don't want to know what I don't want to know. Besides, that old man has been a bother. I don't have a choice but to know. Itachi shook his head. For someone who showed great knowledge in chakra and ninjutsu, this was a disappointing attitude. He does dark things that have landed him in trouble. Father says he has committed treason in more than one occasion, but the Sandaime Hokage let him go. Things are a little different with your father though. Itachi was sure if he got associated with the War Hawk, it wouldn't paint a good picture with other clans. For now, his father was trying to build bonds based on trust with the Hokage and trying to stay away from controversial situations that would bring out questions from other clans. Danzo was bad news and his father didn't want him, nor did he like him. Itachi had to follow that rule. Though, there was something that interested him about the man. His father was willing to admit that Danzo does love Konoha, was willing to sacrifice everything for the village. However, he was an extremist who would do anything. Even if it meant throwing the village into a civil war, he would do it as long as in the end, it freed Konoha from what he perceived to be a threat to Konoha's future success and superiority. Apparently, the man believed that Konoha should rule over other nations as the strongest. That was something that Itachi didn't agree with and would never agree with. Bad news, huh? Naruto said in thought. Naruto wasn't the one to be holding grudges and hating people as well as marking other people as enemies. But he was sure he wasn't ever going to like that man. He went to the extreme in getting what he wanted. That included using other people. Itachi nodded. Why are you trying to become powerful, Naruto? Over the past months, you have truly made a miraculous turn around in your abilities. There has to be something driving you. What is it? Naruto sighed and smiled. You ask a lot of questions, Itachi, he said lightly. Is it wrong? I'm interested, and observing won't lead me to answers. It will be just speculations. I want to know. I don't believe what you said in class that day. Do you have any thoughts of becoming Hokage? Naruto continued smiling as he shrugged his shoulders carelessly. Who knows? He said. But I'm rather selfish. What I do is not for someone else, but for myself. This is not for the benefit of anyone, but for me, he paused. I normally wouldn't bother, but since you asked, what is your reason? I want to bring change, Itachi said. I want to protect this village. I want to protect my clan. I wish for the world to be a better place where there are no wars, where people aren't killing each other for meaningless reasons. Naruto blinked. He tilted his head to the other side. That is a big load, he said. What do they call people like you? Oh well, it doesn't matter much anyway. As long as you remain in Konoha and I of Konoha, we will both serve Konoha at our best of abilities. The redhead was being honest. There was no doubt he planned to give his all in the service, but it wouldn't just be for Konoha, but also for his selfish desire. Perhaps it was that thought of trying to step away from his father's shadow. If he wanted to successfully do it, he would have to outdo and surpass the feats of his father. There was no other way he could step outside that shadow. The first anniversary of the Kyuubi rampage is near. If Itachi was looking for a reaction from Naruto, he was disappointed. Naruto didn't show any emotion. His expression remained the same as he nodded. The day that changed my life and most people's lives. You and I are in somewhat similar situations, aren't we? It was as if the redhead had just noted it at that moment. Itachi shook his head. Naruto truly never thought of many things outside of becoming the best. That was the glaring reality. But for the good of things, Itachi was going to try to change that. Yes, Itachi said, putting his resolve aside. He stood up and took a stance. I wish to see how good you are. Naruto smiled, waving his hands. I'd rather not, he said. Let me rephrase. Today, you will show me how good you are, whether you like it or not. Ho. Naruto smiled, eyes closed. He folded his hands across his chest and spoke once again. No, you can't. I can simply choose to defend until you tire out. You don't really like being forced into battle, do you? Who knows? Naruto stood up. I guess I will have to engage as a thank you for showing that jutsu earlier. That is fair, don't you think? Not really, but I will take it. Sometime later. Sarutobi compound. It was a rare occasion for Naruto to be invited over to the compound for a chat with the Sandaime Hokage. Naruto had in the past met up with the retired Hokage in the Hokage Tower and at his house. The old man was nice, if Naruto could say. He didn't like old people, given his experiences with Yoshino, but the Sandaime was a different person. He was okay, smart and someone who could talk without spewing those threats Yoshino usually throws at him or making the kind of invites that old man going by the name of Danzo usually goes by. Ah, Naruto-kun, the Sandaime said with a smile, seeing Naruto enter the small meeting hall he was sitting within. He'd been having a meeting recently and hadn't bothered to leave the place. So nice you could make it. Naruto returned the smile as he sat down. A conversation with the Sandaime Hokage is always a pleasant thing. There are so many things I ignore, but I have never been able to ignore the wisdom that comes off your mouth. The professor chuckled lightly, his aged eyes watching the redhead carefully, a few calculations going through at the back of his eyes. I believe that we who are aged and experienced must always teach the young ones the right ways. But of course, just because we are old doesn't mean that we are always right. What worked in the past won't work now. The world is forever evolving. That is a little too deep for me. Naruto wasn't ashamed to say that out loud. He really didn't have time to have such thoughts. He was still just a kid. He should be allowed to ignore everything else and focus on just one thing. The god of shinobi stared curiously. What do you mean that is a little too deep for you, Naruto-kun? He already had an idea. He wasn't staying oblivious to the things that occurred around the village, especially with the future generation. Someone like Naruto was a person of interest. When the Sandaime had looked at the eyes of the redhead just after he was born, he'd looked into the eyes of someone who would become something else in the future. There was the potential to become a name that would be spoken about in all corners of the elemental nations. But for that to happen, the redhead had to stop some of his tendencies. He knew because he kept an eye on things. I don't go that far, Naruto said, before putting on a thoughtful look on his face. Perhaps it was his blatant ignorance that made him stop going far in learning things about life. Itachi would surely get along with those kinds of thoughts. He was a deep thinker as well. Why? There is no need for me to go that far. At least I don't see the need. I know what I have to know, what is useful for me now. Tomorrow things will be known tomorrow when the time is right for me to know. The Sandaime Hokage shook his head. Things don't work in that way, Naruto-kun. Why do you train so hard? It isn't for today, but for tomorrow. If you go with the thought that you will know what is needed tomorrow, on that day, shouldn't you say you will train to become strong tomorrow because it is when you're devolved that you wish to be strong? Naruto tilted his head to the side, always the challenging talker. This kind of talk made his head ache. Naruto massaged his head, trying to calm his thoughts. He was being forced to think deeper. He really didn't want to. Power and knowledge are different things. I have come to understand that power isn't something that you gain on the spot. It takes time to grow. That is why I have no expectations now, but in the near future, expectations will be there, the redhead explained calmly. You're correct about that, but that is the same with knowledge. You're preparing for the future by training your body to be able to withstand and do what you wish for it. When you don't know anything, you remain blind. Knowing now helps you deal with things differently and you can come out on top. Say for example, if you'd known about Itachi, you wouldn't have agreed to engage him. But because you didn't know about him, you suffered that experience. Yes, suffering that experience may have helped you, but had you known, you would have avoided it. Some troubles are avoided by knowing. When you don't know, you easily fall into traps. Sometimes you will make it, but it isn't always that you will be lucky. Naruto tilted his head to the side, closed his eyes. If he hadn't been warned against Danzo, he would have possibly agreed to follow the man when he realized that the academy wasn't going to make it work for him. But because he knew, he avoided that trap that would lead him to darkness. That makes sense, Naruto said, seeing the logic in what the third was saying. I've never looked at it in that way, he added. Still, The back of his head still sung ignorance is bliss. The Sandaime Hokage nodded. Of course it does, he said confidently. You have experienced situations that have worked better because you knew. You cannot pass an exam if you do not know. This is why you must study. Life presents many challenges. When you ignore knowledge, you will not be able to face those challenges. Like during an exam, if you refuse the knowledge and don't study, you will fail. Despite being himself, Naruto nodded, listening carefully to the Sandaime's wisdom. He usually ignored other people, but the old man was speaking sense any rational mind couldn't just ignore. He wanted to be great. Perhaps that was need for that as well. Well, they do not call you the professor for nothing, Naruto said with a smile. You can also be called by your own title, Naruto, the Sandaime a bit strongly. You have the chance, resources, and energy to do so. My knowledge and the wisdom to apply it made me what I was in my prime. Power is great, but power and wisdom make you a legend. Naruto's smile widened. If the Sandaime could see the eyes of the redhead, he would have known he hit the spot. A legend was greater than a hero. Minato was just a hero. He could become a hero and a living legend. Perhaps he just didn't know the difference, but the Sandaime's words poked something inside his head. Naruto wasn't going to be satisfied with being great, he wanted to be a legend. Then he wouldn't be stuck behind anyone's shadow. Coming here hadn't been the wrong choice, and his association with Itachi will surely benefit him. Knowledge is vital. Even little things can prove to be important in a situation you never expected, the third continued. Naruto nodded. I'll keep that in mind, Sandaime-sama, the redhead said respectfully. The old man was amused. But he didn't let drive away his thoughts. I hear you have been doing rather well in the academy. When I look at your file, I can't help but be impressed. Academy standards are nothing to be impressed about, Naruto said with a wave of his right hand. Oh. The Sandaime had a look on his face. Naruto may not have said it, but he had just revealed that there was more to his skills than what he showed in the academy. The old man really didn't know what Naruto could do. The redhead protected his training from all eyes, even the all-seeing Byakugan couldn't see through the shield he'd erected around himself. Then I can expect great things from you when you become a shinobi. Naturally, Naruto said. Anything less would be a disappointment. The third smiled. Then I hope to be alive to see you reach your prime. He was sure he wouldn't have to wait too long with the situation outside the village. One wrong move from someone, and a war would be sparked. The Sandaime was sure of it. It made him frown to know that even this current generation wouldn't be spared from the horrors of war. They'd just gotten over the Third Shinobi World War, another one wasn't welcomed, but as things stood, blood would be shed once again. You will. The Sandaime nodded and then adopted a slightly serious expression on his face. How are things at home? His tone was cautious, yet the curiosity was clearly audible, and visible in his eyes. Naruto put on his mask as he responded. Fine, was all he could say. Heard something. The third shook his head. Not recently, he said. I hope things are well. In any case, let us get to the main reason I called you here. Naruto just nodded with his usual smile. Your parents haven't told you this. Your generation doesn't really know anything about what is going on outside the walls of Konoha. Uchiha Itachi, you've been spending time him, yes. Naruto nodded and so the third continued. His father doesn't shield him from the reality of things occurring within and outside of Konoha. I know you're still young, but you must know. Must know, huh, Naruto thought. He had that saying. He knew what he must know. At this rate, you're going to be a shinobi soon. The Sandaime fell short of saying that by end year both Naruto and Itachi would no longer be fit for the academy. Itachi would go, but the Sandaime was sure Minato wouldn't want his son to be a shinobi at such a young age. He would have little options though. The rest of the villagers and shinobi looked up to the Hokage. If something happened now, Minato would have to act. How were parents going to send their children into battle if the Hokage couldn't send his own son? That was the unfortunate situation Naruto found himself in. And this was why the third was taking his time to prepare the boy mentally. When you do, you will realize that things are difficult out there. Both Kumo and Iwagakure are intimidating our shinobi. We can no longer send anyone below the Jonin rank outside the borders of the Fire Country. Some have gone and have not returned, and because we don't have proof over anything, we can't do anything, the Sandaime Hokage said. Naruto closed his eyes. Kumo and Iwagakure. Where did he hear about those two villages? Oh, yes, they were two great shinobi villages, each with two Jinchurikis. Ah, that was troublesome. Although not getting the full picture, Naruto acted as if he did. Things are that difficult, huh? The Sandaime nodded. There is also something that affects you directly. During the Third Shinobi World War, your father made a lot of enemies. This village loved you. Imagine a whole village out to get you as passionate as Konoha was in loving you. That was a clear enough picture for Naruto to understand. He knew that his life would be in danger if went outside the village, and yet he merely put on his mask. I see, he said. Then all the more reasons to train harder. The redhead said smiling. If the Sandaime said he wasn't a bit unnerved, he would be lying. Even with what he'd just said, the redhead was still smiling. Later, Minato put on a smile when he saw the Sandaime Hokage enter his office. It was always pleasant to have the old man in his office to talk things out. He really did learn a lot from the retired Hokage. Even when busy, he would make time for the old man. Nobody understood the demands of the job better than the old man anyway. Sandaime-sama, Minato greeted the old man with a smile on his face. I wasn't expecting to see you today, he added. Really? The old man usually sent a message beforehand so that he could make the time to talk with him. This just came in, the Sandaime said, smiling as he sat down. Oh, something wrong? Minato asked, his expression turning into a lightly serious one. The tone of the Sandaime had some serious urges in it. That made Minato's focus turn up to the old man completely. I had a talk with Naruto-kun earlier, the Sandaime said quietly. It was interesting to say the least. I didn't get much of what happens inside his head, but I got the idea. In any case, have you been aware that he has started training with Itachi? Minato nodded. Yes, he said. I'm aware of that. He told me the day they started doing when I asked. Is there something wrong? The Sandaime shook his head. It's actually a good thing. Naruto isn't dedicated to the greater things as Itachi. To this village I mean. I have spoken to young Itachi and he will become a truly valuable shinobi of Konoha, so will Naruto. But the two are different and I think that Itachi will be a good influence on your son. Minato was silent for a few moments. Despite everything the village gave to Naruto, he doesn't quite love it as most people. His goal is something personal. The Sandaime nodded. That may be true, but it will benefit Konoha greatly. I can assure you of that. Both Naruto and Itachi will become Konoha's greats. The old man managed to smile at that. He wiped it off a second later though. Danzo is making a move on Naruto. Minato frowned. He just won't quit. Yes, but he can be managed. I will not allow him to turn both Naruto and Itachi into his side. I will deal with him, the Sandaime said firmly. Leave him to me and you handle the issues surrounding our village. The situation isn't becoming any favorable. I will trust you on that, Minato said. By that, I can assume he has made a move on Itachi as well, the third nodded. Fugaku won't be pleased by that. He is very protective of his son getting outside influences. Yes, what about Naruto? Minato frowned. I offered him my help but he hasn't asked me a damn thing. He has asked his mother about the use of chakra chains and some things about barriers, but nothing from me. Don't let it bother you too much, Minato-kun, the Sandaime said calmly. It's not that Naruto doesn't want your help. It is that he doesn't want to be like you. Naruto has been living in your shadow for all his short life. He probably doesn't want to end up learning things from you as that would still leave him in your shadow. What Naruto wants to do is surpass you on his own. He wants to be greater than you. Take heart in that. My own son had no desire to be greater than I am. But your son respects your skills and wishes to surpass all that. You should be happy. But I want to help him. It made him happy that his son wanted to surpass him, but he still wanted to be part of that growth and development. I know. But at this stage, you can only give him support and give him some pointers. If you speak to him he will listen to you, the Sandaime said. There are some people that Naruto doesn't listen to, but despite everything, you're still his father and he will listen to you if you try to speak to him. I will try that, Minato said with a smile. Before I forget. Well, it is the reason I came here. I informed Naruto of what has been going on around the elemental nations. You know things better than anyone close to him, so he will eventually come to you to inquire since he doesn't know most things because of his ignorance. Minato didn't seem happy about that. Kushina won't be pleased. It's all right, the Sandaime said with a wave of his right hand. It won't change anything in young Naruto. It will only influence him to stop being ignorant and continue training hard. How did he take it? The Sandaime Hokage frowned. With a smile. Uzumaki Library. Azumi stared at Naruto with surprise written all over her face. She was truly surprised to see Naruto behind a desk, while reading material that wouldn't help him with his training, with a bored look on his face. The redhead almost exclusively read things would have help with his training or the things that would lead him to get good grades at the academy. Nothing else much had mattered in his eyes aside from those valuables. Training was his life, so he didn't care much about anything else. Perhaps the thing that surprised her most was the bored look he had. If it was boring, why was he even going through it? Normally, when Naruto found something boring, he didn't bother go through it. He said he wasn't a masochist to make himself suffer in that way, yet he was doing something along those lines. You're looking into the history of our clan? Azumi asked, seeing the redhead with the book before him. You know, if you'd paid attention when I was teaching you these things you wouldn't be going through them now. I didn't want to know back then, Naruto simply said. But it has become apparent that this clan will remain part of my life whether I like it not. I will have to know everything that I need to know as heir of the Uzumaki clan. What brought this up? People never stop learning. I'm no different. I'll still ignore some things, but this is something that I must know. The Sandaime Hokage did say something that brightened my vision. The redhead looked up at Azumi for a moment before looking back at his books. The history is rather long, but nothing much entertaining like with the Uchihas and the Senju. Azumi shook her head. We have always been peaceful and refrained from fighting, she said. Of course we won't have a history like those two clans. You don't really want being clan head, do you? Naruto was silent for a few moments. I don't really know, he said. Itachi has his clear dreams. He loves this village, his clan, and will eventually take the position of clan head from his father, and he will do so not for himself but what he desires to protect and for his love. You want to be like that? Naruto snorted. I'm me. We all can't wish for the same things. I guess Uzumaki will always remain by my side, but I have no desire to be like him. The true dream will not change, the redhead said firmly. Being head clan will represent freedom for me and will elevate my status. It is all selfish desires for me. Nevertheless, I still believe the clan must be taken care of. There is really no one who can do that aside from me. Azumi nodded. Then are you going to take your role seriously? Have you just met me? Naruto asked the redhead with a blank look on his face. My dream will come first before anything, and I will still ignore what I don't need. Responsibilities pushed on to me are a chore. I will handle those kinds of things when the time comes. For now, let me be a kid. Azumi shook her head. He wanted to be a kid when it was convenient for him. Ah, being Uzumaki Naruto was surely fun. Well, she was his guardian, and even if he does grow old, she would always be by his side. No matter what. This was a job that she'd taken for life. Your mother was asking about you. My mother is always asking about me, Naruto merely said with a shrug. What did she want? Her son. I'm available once a week. That is enough for me. I don't really have the time, Naruto said. Really, things were just awkward between him and his parents. They could never return to the past glory. Naruto had changed. He was no longer that person. He was someone with dreams now, and he wouldn't stop until he achieved them. Is it really that uncomfortable for you? I just don't know how to act around them. They are trying. I understand that. But things cannot return to the way they were. They have to accept that, or else their attempts would someday become an annoyance that would drive him out of the Uzumaki compound. Yoshino would no doubt try to have his head if he did something like that. Then again, Naruto wouldn't care. If he does become a shinobi soon, he would be able to afford his own living. He wouldn't require the support of his parents. He would try that, just to feel the freedom of being independent. They will eventually, Azumi said. With what she had to say, Azumi chose to be quiet when going about it. Yoshino wants to see how far you have progressed in Fuinjutsu. She said you have to meet her by tomorrow evening. Naruto frowned. That will not work, he said. I really don't have the time to listen to her brutality. The old hag can wait for me for all she likes, but I will not see her. I'm capable of avoiding her. What will happen the day she catches you? I will deal with it then. For now, you didn't say anything, the redhead said calmly. As long as she doesn't know where I am, she won't find me. And given how things are, she won't go to my mother to ask about it. Mother would probably offer her some choice of words. You may be on the safe side, but I will still have to face her. You don't have to listen to her. She isn't your boss or anything. I'm your master. She can go back to Uzu for all I care, Naruto said a bit loud. He then calmed himself before speaking once again. Was there anything else? No, Azumi said with a shake of her head. It was just the message. Forest of Death. Naruto ducked under a swinging kick from Itachi and then moved back slightly to create some distance between him and the Uchiha. As soon as he touched down, Itachi attacked him once again, this time high kick aimed at his face. Naruto placed his hands in a cross position to block the kick. His defense was strong enough to shield himself from the kick. As Itachi jumped back, Naruto took out a kunai and threw it towards the Uchiha's forehead. Itachi intercepted the projectile with his own. He threw a kunai that hit Naruto's. It had been angled just enough to deflect it from his trajectory. They'd been doing things for a couple of minutes, Itachi attacking head-on and Naruto playing the defensive guy. For the past week, the redhead had rarely attacked him. He wasn't giving away anything. It was always on the defense and only attacking when there was a clear opening. If it was chess, one could say the redhead only moved his pieces in places he knew they couldn't be taken out. He didn't do risky moves. But it was okay. That had been the agreement. Itachi wasn't complaining because he was never actually able to bypass the redhead's defense. Naruto had a solid defense, but in terms of attacking, he had little, as far as Itachi could tell anyway. Regardless, this was something of a challenge. He helped Naruto improve his defenses and Naruto helped him see how his attacks left him open. It was also a good puzzle trying to figure out how to attack someone who was going to instinctively respond to everything he throws at him. Shall we end here? That is fine, Naruto said calmly. This way of fighting, there was no winner no loser. Naruto had admitted that even though this was just sparring, he would hate to lose and so he removed all the strings that would bind for there to be a winner and a loser. It was apparent that the redhead didn't like losing at all. He had a winner's DNA, but wasn't the kind to pull all dirty tricks to win. Although he hated losing, he didn't engage in anything he would lose. He only engaged when he was confident he would win or when he had no other choice but to engage. A draw was also acceptable. There was also a thing such as a technical retreat. You're not going to be easy to defeat, Itachi said with his thoughts at the tip of his tongue. Not just because of your defense, but because you won't be the shinobi who will blindingly engage into battle without knowing much about his enemies. When you're sure you can't win, you don't test things. That old hag in the Uzumaki compound might call it being a coward, but I call it the smart way. When you don't know when you're beat, you die young as a shinobi. We must all know our limits, how far we can go, and how long we can push. That is essential for any shinobi. When we don't know our limits, we tend to overestimate ourselves, Itachi said. Truly, Naruto may not claim to be a genius with fighting, but truly was. It was always thinking before an action when it came to battle. Have you actually spent more time training in your offensive capabilities? Naruto shook his head. I've been working on creating a perfect defense. My rule is that before you attack, you must be able to defend. The redhead looked up into the sky. Itachi, you were turned into this good person because of what you saw during the Third Shinobi World War. I didn't see anything because my father didn't take me to the battlefield. However, when the Kyuubi went on a rampage, I saw everything. My parents, that senile old hag, and my father's personal guards, they were away from the clan's compound. In my house, I was alone. I went out when the Kyuubi went on a rampage, I saw everything. I don't know if I was scared or not. But I saw people being swatted like they were flies, a mountain that couldn't be cut down no matter what was thrown at it. Itachi frowned. This wasn't something good. Even though Naruto was saying that, There was no emotion on his tone. He was sure even his expression was just a blank mask. That worried Itachi, perhaps even more so because it would confirm his suspicions. Even with all that I saw, there has never been a day I had a nightmare because of it. That should have been an event that changed my life. Perhaps it did and I've just been unconscious of it. Naruto shook his head, opting not to continue. Anyone would have been changed. Hell, even the older generation still had the nightmares of that day. But for Naruto to have watched everything and yet have a peaceful sleep. That was worrying. It said much about the redhead's emotional state. Perhaps he felt nothing because he'd been too young to understand what was really going. At that point, Naruto was pretty much a naive spoiled brat who only knew happiness. It was possible. But now that he understood everything, should it not give his heart a burden? People are different. Everyone is unique. Our perception of things is different depending on what we value. That is something new, Naruto said more to himself than to Itachi. I have never been the one to think too deeply about the future. I didn't consider things like what was right or wrong, the moral responsibility. My focus was simply with training. But the conversations I have been having have led me to discover that there is more to life than just training. This was something new to Itachi. Not the words themselves but the fact that Naruto was saying it. The redhead had at times looked careless about the things that were around. Perhaps it had something to do with his ignorance. Still, Itachi didn't think that part would be changing any time soon. He figured that was a part that defined who the redhead was. Well, our age group isn't focused on that, Itachi said. It is about playing and having fun. He didn't have that time though. There was something that he had seen. Something he had to change. I had my fun. I had the time many would wish they could have. It was fun, Naruto said with a smile. Perhaps now is the time to grow. I wish I had remained ignorant of it though. Knowing is making life troublesome. Itachi knew what the redhead was talking about. Would you rather be like those in our class? Naruto nodded. They are basking in their ignorance. Who can blame them? They don't know anything. The bliss of being ignorant, the redhead said lightly. Well, this situation was just ideal for him. It would make it possible for him to start his journey quickly. He wouldn't need to spend a decade fighting for people to know his name. Itachi shook his head. Just be careful that ignorance doesn't become your downfall, the Uchiha said. What is that you wanted to tell me? Performing ninjutsu. Why do we weave hand sings before performing a jutsu? Some experienced shinobi are able to do jutsu without the use of hand signs. I have said this, chakra, excellent control over it and the imagination to give shape to the chakra is what I need to do ninjutsu. The Nadaime Hokage was perfect when it came to Suiten jutsu. For many of them, he didn't need to weave hang signs. Why was that? Because of his high control over the element. If controlling an element becomes as easy as moving your hand, then there will be no need to waste time performing hand signs. Naruto paused for a moment. It may take time, but I want to make this a reality. Naruto surprised him once again. He shook his head. He shouldn't be. When it came to ninjutsu, the redhead had shown to be knowledgeable. Perhaps this was what he must know. He had a certain way on going over with ninjutsu, it was a way that worked. How good is your control over your chakra? Perfect, Naruto said simply. With the amount of time I have spent on learning it, anything less would be disappointing. Perfect control over chakra makes it easy to learn ninjutsu. You won't have troubles trying to figure out the right amount of chakra needed to perform certain jutsus. With good enough control you can do it, Itachi countered. But I do see your point. Fire is my natural affinity. So learning fire-based jutsus is quite easy for me. Although he wasn't going to say it aloud, it was much simpler for the redhead given his control over the element. The fireball is truly an easy jutsu to do. Its method is simple. Need chakra inside of your body, turning it into flames and then release the flames as if breathing out, Naruto said holding a single hand seal. Going through many hand seals is a waste of time. One is only necessary for activation. Saying that, Naruto exhaled a small fireball from his mouth. It may have been small but the heat produced by the flames was by no means small. Itachi just shook his head. At this level, he couldn't perform that jutsu with just a single hand sign. Naruto was truly going to be amazing when he grew up. Then again, he still had the Sharingan. There was so much unlimited potential up for grabs. If they became partners, they would be a force to be reckoned with and the proud protectors of the hidden leaf. As you can see, it still needs work, but within a couple of days, it should be perfect, Naruto said with a frown. The frown was for his disappointing try for a one-hand jutsu he deemed as simple. Itachi nodded. It wasn't good as the one he did with hand signs, but still something nonetheless. My father wants to speak with you, the Uchiha said a bit cautiously. You don't have to see him anytime soon or feel forced to do it. You can do it at any time you choose. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto said, walking away from the Uchiha. I have other matters to attend to. Itachi just shook his head. Well, he got the message through. The redhead may have acted as if he didn't hear him, but Itachi was sure Naruto had heard him. The day would come. For now, Naruto just had no interest in talking to his father. Perhaps he needed time to think about it and look into his father before meeting him. Oh well, the day had been productive. He had no complaints. The redhead was surely going to train some more in this hidden training ground. If Naruto was going to get more work done, it was best he did so. He didn't want to be left behind by someone he'd beaten without even trying less than a year ago. You've made quite the friend there, Shisui said, sitting atop of a tree branch. We're not exactly friends, but training acquaintances. Itachi corrected. Well, he did hope they would become friends soon. All that was needed was time. How long have you been here? Long enough, Shisui responded calmly. I know the Yondaime Hokage. He is nothing like him, in personality at least. But then again, that seems to be the purpose, isn't it? Itachi just nodded. How are things out there? He asked Shisui, knowing the older Uchiha was already a shinobi. So, he knew about what was happening around the shinobi world better than he did. Shisui looked up to the leaves that obstructed his view of the sky. This village needs to be protected by those willing to sacrifice everything. Itachi, when you step into the shinobi world, you will have to give you everything in order to protect the village that we love. Is it really that bad? Not yet, but it will soon enough, Shisui said quietly. Introduce me to Naruto one day. He is the son of the Hokage. Whether he likes it or not, he will be thrown into the fray, and the Sandaime has entrusted me with a mission. Itachi looked curiously at his friend, wondering what his friend was talking about. A mission from the Sandaime Hokage. It had to be something important. By the looks of things, everyone was making a move on Naruto. His future, present and actions will mean a lot. Seeing the look Itachi had on his face, Shisui merely smiled. Don't worry about. It is nothing dangerous. He paused, landing down the ground. You know it better. Naruto isn't quite like us. He doesn't have the kind to make sacrifices and make selfless decisions. The Sandaime wants us to work on that. Later. Uchiha compound. It was truly an interesting development that Minato would give him permission to make a move on Naruto, so long as he helped his son gets better. Perhaps the Yondaime Hokage, despite his firm belief that things couldn't get worse, was beginning to take things seriously in order to prepare his son for the tomorrow that waited for him. Of course, Fugaku had been more than happy to take Minato's blessing. He wasn't planning on poisoning the boy against his father. He had no such plans. Given what he had learned about the redhead, he figured even manipulating him wouldn't be an easy task, not that he had those plans. He just wanted someone who would become a valuable partner to the Uchiha and secure their future inside the hidden leaf. Their future was here, and nowhere else. Father, Uchiha Fugaku was taken out of his thoughts when Itachi walked into his study. Itachi, the Uchiha head, acknowledged his son's presence. You're back a bit late today. Had too many things to do at the training ground today. Itachi nodded. I had a session with Naruto and then one with Shisui, the black-haired said as he sat down in front of his father's desk. Fugaku nodded. Ah, he truly was blessed to have both Shisui and Itachi in his clan. It was especially wonderful when Shisui was excelling so tremendously that the Sandaime Hokage even took interest in him. Itachi wasn't the only one loved by the villagers, but Shisui as well. If he could have Naruto as well, how things could turn up for the Uchiha. Yes, things would be smooth for the clan. How was young Naruto? He is simply amazing, father. Even Shisui was impressed by him. His understanding and control over both chakra and the fire element is exceptional, Itachi said. he sounded a bit happy. You will have to see him to believe it yourself. When will that happen? I spoke to him. It is only a matter of time, Itachi said to his father. Fugaku allowed a smile to grace his lips. That was good news. Do you have something you want to tell or ask me, Itachi? He asked, seeing the look his son was giving him. Itachi nodded. He didn't know if there was an easy way to go about it, and so, he just went with it. Shisui told me that we may have a war soon. Fugaku frowned. The older Uchiha hadn't been wrong to inform Itachi about it. It was the truth. He knew it too well. He was always in communication with the Yondaime Hokage after all. That is what it looks like. We've just had a war recently. People are still recovering from the losses. I don't think any village will be too keen to enter into one. However, anything is possible. Itachi wanted to know what was causing the problems. He couldn't really understand why the nations would want to engage in another war. He'd seen one. He didn't want to see another one. Why is it, father? Perhaps they are nervous. Konoha called things to a halt with Iwagakure because both villages had suffered massive losses. If it hadn't been for Minato, I doubt Iwagakure would have agreed to a truce, Fugaku explained calmly. Since then, Konoha suffered more losses because of the Kyuubi incident. Perhaps they even smell blood. But the village remains strong. The Uchiha still stand firm and we have the Uzumaki. Itachi tilted his head to the side. With the destruction of their home village and many of them dead, there's just a few of them. Why do they still fear them? Vengeance possibly, Fugaku said. They were attacked simply because of their power. They hadn't provoked anyone. Numbers don't matter, son. The Uzumaki sealing corps is made of just 4 members. Yet, if they so wished, they could disable all barriers put as security in any village and they could disable all bijus. No one in this village was able to even harm the Kyuubi. Our attacks couldn't do anything against it. But do you know what? Naruto's mother held the biju at bay. She kept it from moving and creating a barrier so powerful even a beast that could flatten this village in a minute couldn't escape from. The credit goes to Minato, but that woman stopped things. Itachi, you must understand that before that, Kushina had survived the Kyuubi's extraction and had just given birth. Perhaps you don't know, but if it had been me who had the Kyuubi extracted from, I would have died at the scene. Itachi absorbed it all silently. When he had fully digested what his father had told him, he opened his mouth to speak. She must be a great kunoichi. She was, Fugaku said. Do you understand what could become of Naruto if you combine his Uzumaki specialties and what he is currently doing? The following morning, Yoshino had woken up early and made her way towards the compound's gates waiting for Naruto to make his way towards the academy. There was no other way to leave the compound aside the gate. She had made sure of that and Naruto was too young to have learned Shunshin to teleport away from the compound. There was also a concrete report that he made his way out around this time heading towards the academy. She didn't have to wait for too long as the redhead came into view with his hands inside his pockets. She waited patiently until he reached her before glaring at him sternly. I know that useless girl gave you my message and you chose not to oblige, the old woman said sternly. Naruto opted to just look at the woman impassively. It was possible that he hadn't heard her because he was busy trying to figure how he was going to get out of this one. It was really a tricky situation and he needed to find a good way to get out of it. Really, he hadn't thought the old hag would be willing to wait for him at the gate just so he could follow through to her demands. Are you listening to me? He really didn't want to end up being forced off to the training ground to bear with her. Naruto would rather suffer the torment of the academy rather than be in the presence of the old woman. She was a man. Naruto was abruptly cut off from his thoughts when a chakra chain sped towards his forehead. The redhead did just enough to dodge the chain. That had been close. If it had hit him, he would have disappeared in a puff of smoke. The young Uzumaki tilted his head to the side as he put on his smile, eyes closed. Good morning, Oba-san, he said happily. Itachi planted his left foot on the ground on Naruto's right-hand side. His right foot was raised high, aiming at Naruto's temple. Naruto had his back turned against the Uchiha and was trying to turn clockwise to face the Uchiha. He turned just fast enough to see Itachi's foot plant into his face. The redhead didn't wince when the kick forced him to slide backwards slightly. For Naruto, the fight was over. For Itachi it was just the beginning, but that all depended on Naruto. Once Naruto took a hit while he was trying to defend, it was all over. The defense was supposed to be so perfect that nothing could pass through it. If Itachi was able to bypass it once, he would do it again and again. As such, Naruto couldn't go with this again. Not before he went back to the drawing board to get something done to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again. Naruto looked at his hands with a frown. It was disappointing that Itachi had learned him this quickly. But it was to be expected. Itachi was smart, way smarter than him. One way or the other, unless his defense was perfect, Itachi would eventually outsmart him. It made Naruto think that those blessed with genius genes had an unfair advantage over normal people like him who had to nearly kill themselves in order to gain what they had. It took him years to get better, but Itachi hadn't done so in the time he needed. If Itachi had the number of years he had when training, the Uchiha would obviously be way up his league. There was also that something called the Sharingan. Now that he thought about it, Itachi had yet to reveal it to him. The redhead shook his head. He didn't know anything about the Dujutsu, but he was sure there would be something in the Uzumaki library. Senju Tobirama had done a thorough research on the Uchihas during his time. Defeat. Huh. Naruto finally said something. His tone was bitter. He really didn't like being on the losing side. We can hardly call this a battle. You were just on the defense, no attack. Given the amount of time I have seen you fighting, it was only a matter of time before I could learn everything about your movements, Itachi explained lightly. Naruto didn't attack. He figured the one reason that made him hesitant was that he didn't have that much in terms of attack. The redhead had admitted that he usually focused on defending himself rather than attacking. But Naruto was still skilled in kunai throwing. His scores equaled his in the academy. It was also strange that Naruto didn't use that if he really didn't want to attack with his hands and feet. Ninjutsu was out of the question. A defeat is a defeat. There is no nice way to put it. The fact is that I grew confident in the previous draws. I never thought you would end up besting me, Naruto said in a calm tone, the bitterness that had been dancing in his tongue all but a memory now. He seemed to have accepted that he lost and that was it. Itachi shook his head. He wasn't going to try to have an argument when he knew that Naruto wasn't going to change his mind on that matter. Why don't we try attack then? I defend, you attack. Naruto frowned again. Perhaps you think that the only reason I don't attack is because of my lack of attacking skills, but that isn't because of that. There is another reason, Naruto said with his index finger raised. Even when you're attacking, I see no opening to attack. Itachi smiled. Inwardly, Naruto was impressive when he fought. Yet, that response has led him to fully confirm that Naruto couldn't really attack head-on because he knew he would lose the moment he did so. He could only defend fully when not attacking. It wasn't that Itachi didn't make mistakes. It was that if Naruto attacked, he would be open to attack, and the redhead didn't want that. He wanted to be in a position he could attack and not be open. But that meant incorporating his defensive skills with his attacks. Of course, if he did that, he would slow down his attacks. Some shinobi might say that the best defense is attack, but when facing a stronger opponent, you had to know how to defend or else you would lose the battle. A stronger opponent will always overpower your attacks, but when you were able to defend, you could bear his attacks and strike when the opportunity represents itself. A light bulb appeared above Itachi's head when a thought came to mind. You said that you could defend until I tire down. Naruto tilted his head to the side. He had a feeling that Itachi had found something, but he merely said, so. Defending doesn't take much energy and chakra from you, but when you continuously attack a stronger defense, you continue to increase your output in power to break through. Naruto smiled. You will naturally tire quicker as you grow frustrated when your attacks are proving futile. A frustrated man can be dangerous, but I know when tired, he will leave an opening and I will take my chance. Itachi shook his head. I guess that applies when you're forced into a battle you can't win or don't know you will win. Naruto nodded. You can't always think that you will be better than everyone. The Sandaime Hokage has taught me something very important. It isn't always the stronger shinobi who wins the battle, but even a weak shinobi can win against stronger opponents. The solution lies in the ability to be able to think strategically. You learned something after all, Itachi said with a smile, giving the impression that it pleased him that the redhead was learning something. Then again, when it came to fighting, Naruto wouldn't refuse the knowledge. Why don't we see how you fight when attacking? Perhaps I could help you. Naruto shook his head, smiling. It is embarrassing to say this, but I may appear to be better when we are at the academy, but that is only because the academy puts limits on you. In terms of attacking, you are superior to me. Naruto paused for a moment before adding. The academy, you know my selfish desire. It didn't take Itachi too long to figure out what Naruto was saying. So you don't engage in a fight with me at the academy because, given academy rules, you'd lose out. Your objective is to become the best. Naturally, that means claiming the top spot in everything. So then, why not at the academy? If I were to lose, you'd become the best and I wouldn't be able to get one over you again. 2 defeats. No can do. I would rather settle for the shared spotlight rather than face another defeat that would make all my efforts seem worthless. With kunai and shuriken throwing, I am supposed to equal you, but not better than you. Itachi shook his head. All the more reasons you should allow me to help you increase your attacking capabilities. And I can't do that if you don't let me see how you attack. Naruto seemed to put it into thought for a couple of minutes before shaking his head. Some other time. I have no doubt I can learn something, but not just at the moment. I did accept your invitation because I knew I would eventually again something. Itachi nodded in acceptance. As long as you're saying you will allow me to help you. Which jutsu are we learning today? Itachi seemed to think for a moment, before shaking his head. Why don't you show me a jutsu you have created on your own? Naruto didn't need to think about it. He held out his right hand, and flames lit up before swirling up at the palm of his right hand. They had no firm, just swirling around violently. I wanted to create a fireball, small version of it that could be used like this. It isn't complete. I was wondering if you could have some tips. Itachi arched an eyebrow. Not being surprised by Naruto's jutsu, but by the fact that the redhead didn't seem to know that his jutsu was basically a copy of his father's Rasengan. At least when it was completed it would become an elemental Rasengan. You do know that your father invented a jutsu like that, right? Itachi almost looked amused when he saw the look on Naruto's face. Go ask him. In time, with the help of clones, you will be able to do it and then return to teach it to me. Naruto frowned. Is it that necessary? Itachi nodded. Or you could spend more years burning yourself, the Uchiha added. He could see that the jutsu was really dangerous. In the form it was unstable, and the only reason Naruto was able to maintain that violent form was because of his excellent chakra control. Naruto sighed, dispersing his jutsu with a wince, something Itachi was quick to note but made no comment on it. I guess I have no choice, he said, settling down on the ground. How are you with Kenjutsu? Good, Itachi said. You wish to learn it? Naruto nodded. I want to create my own style that will complement my fighting style. I recently received my special made sword, so I guess it is time I start learning to use it. To familiarize myself, I have to learn how a normal sword is held and how it is used. Some things you can't really do on your own without help. I won't be a good teacher, but I can have someone to help you, Itachi said. Shisui, you can come out now. Shisui flashed behind Itachi, smiling. How long have you known? I have been here. Long enough, Itachi said, giving the same response that Shisui gave him the other day. Fair enough. Shisui turned to Naruto and spoke. I'm Uchiha Shisui, real shinobi and Itachi's friend. A pleasure to finally meet you. Itachi has spoken a lot about you. Naruto smiled beautifully. The pleasure is all mine, he said politely. It was reasonable to suspect that Naruto may not have known who Shisui was at that time. Whether it was true or not, Itachi didn't ask about it. He figured if the redhead didn't know, by tomorrow, he would know. Later that day, Azumi arched a curious brow when she entered into the library and found Naruto with stacks of scrolls in front of him. It wasn't that he was reading that surprised her. It was hardly a surprise. Naruto was always reading at night in the past weeks. In fact, every day when he returns from his daily training, he spent hours at the library reading. She had to do her job of bringing him food here, even though it wasn't allowed. She still did it because she didn't want him starve himself. What had surprised Azumi was Naruto's position and the look on his face. The redhead had his face leaning against his right palm with his elbow placed on the desk, and a faraway look on his face. He seemed to be thinking hard about something. Is something wrong? Naruto-sama. Naruto didn't respond. Naruto-sama. Naruto's eyes turned to Azumi. Oh, it is you, he said. Seemingly not disturbed her shout. Is it that time already? Azumi noted that Naruto's tone was a bit down. She grew curious in wondering what it could be that was eating him inside or at least making him think a bit too deep. She was arguably a rare occurrence. Something wrong? Azumi asked, sitting down in front of Naruto, the container containing Naruto's food still in her hands. I saw something going on around the village as I was coming back home. What is going on? Kyuubi Attack Festival, Azumi said. The villagers are ready to celebrate the day the Yondaime Hokage saved their village and honor those who died in the service. Naruto seemed to think for a moment. So that hard time to be an Uchiha or Uzumaki, huh, the redhead said in thought. I didn't think you'd concerned yourself with that, Azumi said with a raised brow, showing surprise that those words actually came out of Naruto's mouth, not just that only, but also the manner in which it was said. I am going to be head of this clan some years to come. Of course this has to concern me, Naruto said quietly. Well, thinking about it too deep won't solve anything, he added. Was it what you were thinking about? Naruto shook his head. I was reading about the Sharingan, he said with a frown. I take it you didn't like what you read. Obviously, Naruto said. This was rather disturbing. I can't believe those eyes can do the impossible. I saw them today. They were frightening, and with what I read here, I am truly glad the Uchiha are our friends. I wouldn't want to fight someone like Itachi with those eyes activated. Jealous? Possibly, Naruto said without shame. I met Shisui today, and to think that I thought Itachi was the only one special amongst the Uchiha, the redhead shook his head. I wonder how one can be on top with those blood-red eyes looking over everything like a hawk. You sound defeated. Naruto shook his head slightly. Motivated. His word and expression truly contradicted each other. With the Sharingan, Itachi could slip through my current abilities without too much trouble, and that bothers me. I want to create an absolute defense that will help me defend against those bloody eyes. It represented a mountain to climb. Naruto didn't like challenges, but this was one that he would have no choice but to try and complete. There was no other way for him to go about things without facing those Uchihas, not in real fight, but they would be a great competition. He had tried not to look at things in that way, but there was no other choice now, especially with how things were. He had to look at things in the light he didn't wish to see them. The Uchihas would be a challenge to his growth, not that exactly, but his rise to greatness. Itachi was only going to grow stronger than he was. For a moment, Naruto had allowed himself to bask in the illusion Itachi would not grow further than he had. Azumi merely smiled encouragingly. You can do it if you try. Naruto nodded. I will do it, he said. He had no other choice but to try. He didn't want Itachi or Shisui getting one over him during training. It was apparent that the other Uchiha would be joining them for their training sessions from the days that follow this one. 2 Uchihas against just 1 Uzumaki, so not fair. I'm a pathetic censor, you know, and that might prove lethal to me during battle. Shisui was watching me and Itachi for some time, and I didn't know, but Itachi did. I wish to use your Fuinjutsu skills to create a special seal. When do we start? Azumi said excitedly. She was more than ready to help Naruto with anything he wanted, especially when it has something to do with Fuinjutsu. By the way Naruto spoke, he seemed to have an idea of what he wanted anyway. So, creating the seal would be easy, or so she thought. After we eat, Naruto said. I have already eaten. Doesn't matter. You will eat again. We always eat together when it is just the two of us. Besides, I wouldn't eat comfortably if you're just watching me, Naruto said calmly. The following morning, Minato had never looked so happy. The Yondaime Hokage looked as if he was about to burst at any moment like a balloon. If he could dance, Naruto was sure his father would be dancing right about now. Hell, the man went as far as to dramatically wipe out a joyful tear from his right eye. This was because Naruto had said one simple thing. Father, I need your help with something. Naruto hadn't realized that it would mean so much to his father if he asked him for help with his training. Yes, he had known that the man was disappointed that he wasn't asking him for help in his training, but he didn't think asking would cause this kind of reaction from his father. Minato was ecstatic. He was really close to say, sulk on that Fugaku. The man was trying to get his son into the Uchiha compound so that he could train him, taking away his job from him. No matter how little it was, Minato was going to take joy in helping his son in whatever it was that he wanted to be helped with. All that mattered was that his son had asked for his help, and screw going to work early, he could spend some time with his son, teaching him a few things. What do you want me to help you with, son? Minato asked, with all the joy contained, yet clearly visible in his eyes. The man was hovering all over Naruto, ready to get his answer inside his head if it didn't come closer. Naruto shook his head. He'd forgotten this side of his father. It reminded him of old memories. It reminded him of the idiot and stupid father had once come to know. This turned his lips into a smile, and then a short laughter. Minato was touched. This was truly a blessed day. When was the last time he heard Naruto laugh? When was the last time? It might have been brief, but it was laughter nonetheless. Oh, how he wished Kushina was present to see their son laugh. He was sure that she would have shed a tear if she saw that. Sorry, Naruto said, all calm now, the amusement all gone. I just remembered something. I haven't seen you like this in a long time. It was one of those times I wondered if you were as smart as the villagers made you out to be. Minato laughed, scratching the back of his head. He took no offense. He had at times acted like an idiot, sometimes even clueless. Those had been the good days. Ah, how he missed it. Minato felt so happy that he considered being absent from work for the day after teaching Naruto what he wanted to be taught. Good times, Minato managed to say. Naruto nodded. I want your help with a jutsu. Itachi said you were the only one who could help, the redhead said. Are you able to help me, father? Minato nodded vigorously. Of course. Uchiha compound. The relationship with the Uchihas had a very good beginning. The business-like relationship began with Uchiha Fugaku, and this is how it went like. Whether it was just some luck or a blessing, it mattered not to Uchiha Fugaku. He accepted the gift given to his clan with open arms and a smile. The gift was in the form of Uzumaki Naruto, the heir of the Uzumaki clan and eldest child of the Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato. Ever since the Kyuubi went on a rampage and destroyed parts of Konoha, ending many lives, the Uchiha have always been put on the blame. Kushina had kept quiet about the Uchiha who had extracted the beast from her, so has Minato. The revelation would have caused them to be hated by everyone in the village as it was one of them who had done so. It was even a great pain since they didn't really know the person was, but Minato had told them the man claimed to be Uchiha Madara. Neither Minato nor Fugaku really believed it, but the man had claimed so and they had nothing to go with. Nevertheless, the village continued to look at them with the eye of suspicion. It was unfortunate and really brought pain to his clan. The only good was that he kept a close relationship with the Yondaime Hokage. The man was fair and honest. He fought to correct and restore the power that had been stolen from them, and it had been restored. Now was just the time to secure the future. Their present standing in the village's system was positive, but their image in the eyes of the villagers was unacceptable. It would change though. It would change soon. He already had Shisui and Itachi working wonders for the clan. Things would change soon. And they were going to change for the best. Fugaku counted the stars as he looked at the boy. The two prodigies of the clan were not enough. Sooner or later, the villagers would awaken to their slumber and realize that the Uzumaki was the son their beloved Hokage. They had adored the redhead before and they would do it again. Fugaku just had to play his cards right, and the villagers would perhaps give him credit for raising the Yondaime's son. If the Hokage was able to trust the Uchiha with his son, then they must be good people, right? The Kyuubi incident had brought it a lot of changes. It was amazing that the village had turned upside down because of just one night. It was just amazing how things change overnight. Minato had granted the redhead permission to enter the academy without even realizing it. Fugaku had laughed when Itachi told him how Naruto had tricked his father into signing the academy registration papers. Naruto may not notice it because he was hardly present in the streets in the village, but he was causing some people to talk about him. They were comparing him to his son. This was a good time as any for the redhead to come to him. He would certainly give it his all to train the boy along with his son. For now, Fugaku could say, finally. He had been waiting for the redhead to come to him. I have been watching you, Naruto, Fugaku said to the redhead Uzumaki. I'd thought that no one would be equal to Itachi when he started at the academy. He has been acclaimed as a once-in-a-generation genius, but you have defied all odds and made a miraculous turnover. I'm honored you think so highly of me, Naruto said smiling. But Itachi is still the best fighter. If it wasn't because I am cheating time, I wouldn't be sniffing his level right now. Fugaku looked amused. Naruto was probably talking about his use of shadow clones as cheating. Well, he was right about that. The use of those clones made him learn quickly. If Itachi wasn't the genius he was, the redhead would have knocked him over some time ago. Still, the boy was obviously being modest. He was impressive for his age. I didn't know you were the modest type, Fugaku said, his eyes staring at the redhead, who just continued smiling while shaking his head slightly. I'm not. Fugaku narrowed his eyes at the redhead as he led him to his house. It was difficult to tell whether the boy was being polite or being honest. Yet, the Uchiha head merely smiled. The boy was just someone he needed. A blessing indeed. You have excelled in your academics, and I'm told since your loss to Itachi on the first time to spar with him you've never lost again to him again, in a fight, Fugaku said. Itachi said you only lost because you had no one to teach you anything. That may be so, but Itachi was just the better fighter, Naruto said. The first loss had been utterly embarrassing. He had been ashamed and gutted. Itachi had beaten him without making the effort. Naruto had loathed that loss, he hated that day, but it was also the day that he changed. It was the day that he swore never to lose in that manner again and never to lose to Itachi again, in a real fight. He hadn't gone to the academy to be a flop and be ignored by everyone. It was true that Itachi attracted the most attention. But he was just an Uzumaki. The Uchiha was more prestigious than the Uzumaki, yet his clan was the most feared clan. The Uzumaki held the Kyuubi after all, and they were the seal masters that have been causing Iwa and Kumo to knock at their doors during night. Don't sell yourself short, Fugaku said. There is no one who can match Itachi in your generation aside from you. The Uchiha head paused for a moment. Itachi tells me you're looking for a teacher and have already mastered the fireball no jutsu he taught you. Naruto tilted his head to the side. That wasn't what he said. He didn't remember telling Itachi that he wanted someone to teach. In fact, his training buddy had been the one to tell him that his father wanted to see him. Naruto may be an ignorant fool, but when something fishy was going on, he did notice it, but of course he wasn't going to correct the man. It would just make the situation a bit troublesome. It was best to just leave it as it was. Besides, if he said he didn't need help, he would be lying. He needed someone experienced to teach him some things that he didn't know. He had come to realize that he couldn't do anything on his own. He needed someone to give him a hand so that he could go further in his development. I have done as best as I could on my own, but I think it is time I get professional help from someone of your caliber, the redhead said. I tried asking the Sandaime Hokage, but he was hesitant, and only offers me his knowledge and his wisdom. That wasn't completely true. He'd never asked the old man about helping him fight. The Sandaime was the one to usually call him. Naruto would never go to the old man on his own without being called. But that didn't mean he actually hated being in the old man's presence. There was a lot he learned from the old man. On this matter, he figured the professor wouldn't have agreed to it even if he asked, not that he had the intention of doing so. That isn't bad, Fugaku said. He may be old, but his mind is still sharp. Once again, Fugaku paused. They reached his house, still holding his words. He sat down and looked at the redhead carefully. I'm willing to teach you ninjutsu, and some life lessons along with Itachi. Naruto only asked one question, why? It was to be expected. If he was learning from the Sandaime, then Fugaku would have been disappointed if the boy had jumped into the opportunity to be trained by him. The boy was ignorant but not stupid. Itachi had told him that. You show promise and Itachi needs someone to remind him that he hasn't reached his peak yet. He has also asked me to teach you, and not teaching you anything will just be letting your talent go to waste, Fugaku explained easily enough. Naruto wasn't satisfied. Why? I'm not from the Uchiha. It wasn't a secret that the Uchiha didn't take others from other clans. Hell, they didn't even allow anyone to enter into the military police. Azumi had told him that other clans had been trying to pressure the Uchiha into accepting some members of their clan into the police force, but they have refused all times. Fugaku looked at Naruto carefully. He figured it was best to just come out clean about it. Besides, he couldn't even read the redhead to tell what he was thinking. It was best not to make him feel like he was being lied to. Perhaps if he was honest, the boy would show him something. Do you understand the situation between our clans? Naruto nodded. Being holders of the Kyuubi, my clan is hated for holding the very beast that destroyed the village and killed many. It goes bad as some even believe that we worship the Biju. On the other side, your clan is suspected of being the ones to let the Kyuubi out. Both our clans are in difficult positions, yet we hold important positions in this village. No, we are its defenses. The Uchiha deal with internal security and the Uzumaki head the sealing corps. You also control the barrier that surrounds the village, and keep track of movements around the village. Isn't it that you know more about what goes in and out the village than the Anbu? Your library contains even secrets that not even I know. Naruto shook his head. I'm not privy to all information. What I told you is what I know. I do know about the sealing corps, but the rest is just news to me, the redhead said. If Naruto wasn't infamous for his ignorance, Fugaku wouldn't have believed what he had just said. There was nothing in his face that told him he was telling the truth or lying. The Uchiha clan head shook his head. Now you know, he said. Yet, both our clans are not in favorable positions in the eyes of the villagers, Fugaku said. I want to create a bond between you and the Uchiha. Your father is the Hokage and you're likely to be the one to succeed him. You are also going to be clan head when you reach that age. Fugaku didn't need to explain any further, Naruto would figure it out. Naruto appeared to think for a moment before smiling. When do we begin training? Fugaku's reasons didn't matter much to him. He was more than happy to get this done. The man would teach him what he wanted to be taught and he would grow stronger than he was. At the end of the day, they will all get what they want. Itachi should return soon. We will wait for him and then begin, Fugaku said. You should go home and tell your mother you'll return late. I don't want to worry her. Naruto shrugged. It is okay. I usually go back home late anyway, the redhead said. Besides, as you said, since some members of my clan know what happens in the village, they'll tell her where I am if she notices I'm not home. Fugaku nodded and a thought came to mind. This compound is surrounded. There are 4 large structures that oversee everything that happens in here. I don't like it. Naruto tilted his head to the side. He made a look that clearly said he was going through some thoughts inside his head. It took a minute or so, but Fugaku was patient. Do you want the same barrier we put around the Uzumaki compound? If you can get a good word for me, yes, Fugaku said. It caused commotion when your clan erected that barrier to keep other people and even Anbu from your compound, but that matters little. I like that nobody really knows what happens in your compound. That kind of secrecy will only lead to more suspicion. The people will start to think you're hiding something. Naruto said with his head tilted to the other side. Fugaku smiled. They don't have to know it is there and we don't have to explain to anyone why we're protecting our clan in that manner. The barrier is only visible to both the Sharingan and the Byakugan, no. It is, Naruto said. I will speak to mother. I doubt that old hag will allow for it though. But if it does happen, I doubt they will even tell how it is made. I understand, Fugaku said. The Uzumaki were not really sharers in the secrets behind their seals. Hell, even Minato was forbidden from telling his Anbu certain things about the barrier that surrounded the village. Then again, every clan had its secrets, and none shared with the other. Have you started your lessons in Fuinjutsu? It was small talk. He already knew the answer. But given Naruto's ignorance, it was reasonable to think that the redhead wouldn't dare to think that he was making small talk. Naruto nodded. I didn't start by writing my name when I learned how to write. I started by writing sealing formulas. Fugaku looked amused. Was Naruto making a joke? He shook his head. The redhead was dead serious. Really now? Naruto didn't respond to that. It was fortunate that Fugaku had not caught on that he had been ignored because Itachi walked in with an older woman, who he assumed to be the Uchiha's mother. Hello Naruto. It has been long, hasn't it? Naruto looked at the woman with a smile. He honestly didn't remember when he last saw her. But she looked familiar. If she was Itachi's mother, then her name must be Makoto, his mother's friend. If it was her, then it had been long time. He probably last saw her during the Prince days. Yes, it has been. Itachi shook his head at Naruto's reaction. I'm surprised you chose to come here on this day of all days. Tomorrow is your younger sister's birthday, isn't it? Naruto blinked, before shaking his head. Celebrations will be made tomorrow. Now he understood why his mother had been insisting that he not go out tomorrow. He'd been merely thinking that the day was the Kyuubi anniversary, not this sister's birthday. This was seriously becoming ridiculous. He needed to open his eyes more than he was. And he thought he was learning. Well, he couldn't be faulted. There were just a lot of things to know. Now that he thought of it, he didn't even celebrate his this year. Fugaku stood up and looked at Makoto. We will return late tonight. Don't wait up, the man said to his wife. As Makoto nodded, Naruto faced her once and smiled a different kind of smile. Following day, Uzumaki compound. Should you be having that kind of a look? Azumi asked, looking straight at Naruto. This was his sister's first birthday. He had to spot a happy look rather than the scowl he was currently wearing. For someone who smiled at every situation, the look was rather surprising. Then again, he had been smiling less over the past days. It was really strange for Azumi, who was accustomed to seeing Naruto smiling. The redhead was always had a smile. Perhaps it had something to do with his encounter with Yoshino. Okay, that was a bad joke. Getting more seriously, it could be the things he has been filling his head with. He was spending a lot of time reading the things that he had been ignoring, and now he understood more about the world that surrounded him. Azumi was glad for that. He couldn't remain blind forever. Naruto turned to look at Azumi. He wiped off the scowl on his face as he stared into the teen before him. My body hurts, the redhead said calmly, and I'm feeling bitter about it. Azumi arched an eyebrow at Naruto's response. Why? She asked. A thought came to mind when she remembered that he came back home later than usual last night. Her head, a habit she was picking up from Naruto. Does it have something to do with the fact that you came home in the middle of the night? Naruto nodded. Your mother was worried, thinking that you might not come back because according to her, she had been all over you about the importance of staying at home today. She thought that you may have ran away from home, Azumi said, looking slightly amused. Kushina had been a bit hysterical about it. She had even asked the Yondaime Hokage to go look for Naruto because she was afraid that she may have messed with being too demanding. Azumi had nearly rolled over the floor because the woman had been holding Minato by the collar of his t-shirt, with the blonde looking nervous as he tried to calm his wife. Naruto didn't ask what amused Azumi. Mother wouldn't forgive me if I decided not to attend Karen's birthday. I had no plans to miss it either way, even though he may or may not have realized it was today. I'm glad, Azumi said with a smile. Then, I went to a training ground with Fugaku and he asked me to attack him so that he could see how good I was in taijutsu. Naruto frowned at the memory. I said no, I wasn't about to attack a grown-up when the result was obvious. Then, Azumi said patiently, he attacked me. That bloody man beat me up and told me that there would be time I would have no choice but to fight a stronger and smarter opponent. Sometimes one had to lose or win. Life was like that. Can you believe it? Are you seriously asking me that, Naruto-sama? Azumi asked in a flat tone. The redhead's ignorance was becoming too much. He had to know that things didn't always work out how he wanted them to. She understood that he was still a kid, but this was the shinobi world, nothing was fair and children grew up quickly. Shaking her head, Azumi spoke once more when Naruto just stared at her with a frown on his face. He was right. Sometimes you have to fight to death. You won't always choose if you want to fight or not. Life is unfair like that. Sometimes you will be forced to fight an opponent who is stronger than you to protect what you love. I hate that kind of world, Naruto said with a snap. He shook his head. Life is supposed to be a beautiful thing. That is what we are promised when growing up. Nobody says anything about a cruel world that takes away your freedom of choice. It was not fair to live like that. But that seemed to be the only reality that waited for him. Naruto frowned when he thought the adult world was that cruel. With being a child, everything came simply and there were no worries. One could afford to be carefree and let the adults handle everything. But it didn't appear as simple as it looks. Welcome to the real world, Azumi said with a smile. That is just wrong, Naruto said flatly to Azumi, who was imitating his smile. Don't do it again. I couldn't help myself, Azumi said with a laugh. She wanted to see how he looked when he was at the receiving end of his own medicine. He didn't seem bothered by it though. He only looked bothered by the fact that she was stealing his thunder. I still have a lot to learn, Naruto said. That bloody man showed me that much last night. Well, at least I was exposed to a real shinobi. That will help along the way. Still, he was never ever going to allow that man to beat him like that, ever again. He understood that the man was a full-fledged shinobi, but Naruto hated being defeated. He would beat that man one day. He would grow stronger than Fugaku and beat him. It wouldn't have to first rain blood for that to happen. You really don't like that he beat you up, don't you? He did it in front of Itachi, Naruto said with his eyes closed. When Itachi fought against his father, he did far better than me. Perhaps it was because I never actually tried to fight and that Itachi has been sparring with his father for some time now, but that doesn't take away the facts. For Naruto, the fact was that Itachi did better than other. He did have justifiable reasons, but he didn't accept them. To him, those were just excuses. Azumi shook her head. Come on, she said, turning away from Naruto. Your mother has already finished baking the cake and your father is already returned from work. They'd decided to do their own celebrations on the day before joining the rest of the villagers later on during evening. It was a great day. So many things had been planned by the villagers and many had already started with the drinking and security had been increased around the village. The military police force was the one a lot busy though. When people were drunk, things went out of control very easy. Naruto put on a smile and nodded at Azumi before following her. The living room was brightly lit and both parents looked really happy. Naruto looked on for a moment before his mother noticed him. You are found him, Kushina said to Azumi. He was brooding outside, Azumi said, walking over to the elder Uzumaki. Naruto shot Azumi a nasty look. No need for that look, Naruto. You don't want your sister copying your bad manners, do you? Kushina chided with a smile. Of course not, Naruto said, walking over to his father, who was holding Karen. The man gave him the younger blonde and Naruto looked at her with a warm smile. Happy first birthday, dear sister, the redhead said warmly. Why don't you just sing for her, while your mother takes the take? Minato said to Naruto. Azumi sang for your third and fourth birthdays. Don't you think it would be best you sing for your younger sister's birthday? Naruto glared at his father. The man smiled innocently. He was saying it because he knew he couldn't sing. Naruto had some time ago tried to sing for his mother's birthday and it had been hilarious. Kushina had laughed at him that day. Naruto had never been so embarrassed in his life. Well, that was before Itachi came along. No way am I missing that, Kushina said with a wide smile. We will take the cake after Naruto sings, Kushina added, still smiling. I'm not singing, Naruto said defiantly. He looked down at Karen. I can only say this to you. I hope you grow up to enjoy your childhood as I did before the unfortunate happened. May you grow up to know our parents' love more so than I have come to experience it. That's so sweet, ya know. Kushina said happily. Azumi came in with the cake and handed it to Kushina. She woman ordered everyone to take a seat on the sofa while Minato got the camera ready. The Hokage set the camera on a timer before sitting on Naruto's right hand, with Kushina on his left. Come and join us as well, Kushina said to Azumi. I don't want to intrude. Nonsense, Kushina said strongly. You are a part of this family and you will always be. Now come on before I have to drag you. Azumi didn't hesitate. She happily walked over and stood by Kushina's side. Okay, everyone, let us all smile, Minato said, grinning. And say, happy birthday Karen-chan. Happy birthday, Karen-chan. The camera flashed twice. As the camera flashed, Naruto's smile widened beautifully. It wasn't the happy smile that he usually wore when talking to people, it was a grin that he put on when he was feeling content with being in the presence of his family. If anything, it felt as if the years had been rolled back and he was in reliving those glorious days he once enjoyed as the Prince of the Hidden Leaf, the good old days. How he wished his sister could also enjoy that kind of life as well. She would grow in joy and in the presence of people who loved her. That made him happy. Perhaps some time ago, he wouldn't have wished for it because she was taking his spotlight, but he didn't care about it now. He had his time and it was time for her to enjoy hers as well. It was time for the princess of the Uzumaki clan to claim her crown. As her older brother he had to be there for her. There was no other good reason other than she was his beloved younger sister. Now he understood why Itachi spoke with joy when speaking about his younger brother. They called it sibling love. He hadn't come to understand it back then because he had stayed away from her presence, but now that she was regularly in his arms, he was feeling the love, he was growing attached to her and Naruto didn't resent it, he loved it. This was his innocent little sister after all. Minato-kun. Kushina started with a smile, her neck twisted to face the Yondaime Hokage, who also turned to face his wife. She'd spoken in a tone that said she had something slightly serious and so the man gave her all his attention. You have something in your face, and it will mess up our cute pictures, Kushina said. Lean closer so that I can remove it for you. Minato did so, albeit cautiously as he had a feeling that something fishy was cooking up in her head. He just hoped she was not about to kiss him in front of Naruto and Azumi, that would be embarrassing. He didn't want Naruto to see them doing it. He was too young to be seeing something like that. Minato blinked when Kushina slammed a handful of the cake she held in her arms on his face. Oops. Naruto looked at the look on his father. It was amusing. He looked like something from the TV. It was also amusing because he hadn't been apparently expecting that to happen. When his mother went on to laugh, Azumi joined her as well. Naruto didn't want something like that to happen to him. He would rather stand behind the camera and take photos on his parents. With that in mind, Naruto stood up, trying to get away from the crossfire as he was sure that his father would want revenge against his mother. As he is walking away from the two, Kushina called him. Naruto made the mistake of turning around to face her because as he did, the cake's cream painted his face. Naruto didn't blink. He just stared at his mother for a few seconds before tilting his head to the side, and then smiled with his eyes closed. He didn't get to say what he wanted to say because both his parents burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. Naruto frowned as Azumi walked over to him, laughing as well. You shouldn't try to make that look on your face with that mask covering you, she said kneeling down to take Karen from him. Naruto smiled and handed Karen to Azumi before wiping off the cream off his face. He then brushed it across Azumi's face. Looks good on you, Azumi. Later that day, Hokage Monument. Naruto was sitting atop of the Hokage Monument, on the Nadaime Hokage's head, overlooking the two brightly lit streets of the village hidden in leaves. It was really something to see. The lights made a beautiful sight to see plus the small fireworks. The noise at the streets were on a new high, with shops not closing at the regular time and drunkards strolling through the streets singing merry songs, while the past Hokages and their families joined some villagers on civil celebrations. But of course, that didn't mean that in some alleys predators weren't lurking in the darkness looking for prey. This was something that Naruto had come to learn recently. He had come to learn that there were people who did horrible and despicable things to other humans. It was ridiculous and just disturbing. Naruto couldn't really understand why someone would wish to harm someone in brutal fashion. They were of the same village. The redhead shook his head. He blamed Itachi for infecting him with his virus. He hadn't been the one to think of such thoughts. Who cared about the moral responsibility and what was wrong and right? He was just a kid, he shouldn't be thinking too deep about all those things. Adult could deal with it. But because of Itachi, he was thinking about it. Curse that Uchiha. Well, it was hard to miss things anyway. On his way up here, he had seen a drunken man trying to force himself on a woman. That was an unfamiliar territory. Naruto didn't fully understand what was going on the scene. But whatever it wasn't right because the woman had been crying for help while the man hit her, all the time trying to take her clothes off. Her cries hadn't been playful. There was the feeling of dread and pain in her tone. Naruto could remember the feeling because he had heard it before and he knew when someone made that sound, something was very wrong. The military police had stormed into the scene before Naruto could actually fully grasp what was going on. He remembered one of those Uchihas telling the man he was charged with attempted rape and assault. Rape was a foreign word to Naruto. He would have to look at it in the library tomorrow. This night was a no-do. He had to rest after leaving the monument. I thought you'd be with your family, Itachi said, walking over to Naruto from behind with Shisui by his side. The others are down there, enjoying themselves. Naruto didn't turn his eyes towards Itachi and Shisui. Perhaps it was because he was bothered by the fact that he hadn't sensed them until Itachi spoke. His back was always open because of his lack of sensory abilities. He certainly had to work on that real soon or he would be open for surprise attacks. Those could be nasty if what Fugaku had said was anything to go by. I've had enough fun for one day, Naruto said with a shrug. Besides, it was best he allowed his sister to take the spotlight. Though he was very sure his presence wouldn't have made any difference because everyone would be fussing over Karen. Oh, your mother must have planned something interesting to celebrate your sister's birthday, Shisui said, as if he knew something. Why did you choose to be here of all places? Others are down at the village enjoying themselves and you're the only one in your family who is missing. I can ask you the same question, Naruto said, his eyes turning towards the older Uchiha for a moment. Shisui smiled as if he was proud about something. He looked at Itachi, who was standing on Naruto's right-hand side. He gave the Uchiha heir a thumbs up. He is beginning to ask smart questions, I think you're having some influence on him. Itachi looked at Naruto for a moment before turning his attention towards the brightly lit streets. Yes, he said. We are patrolling as part of the military police force, Itachi said, responding to what Naruto had said. Naruto arched an eyebrow at that response. Really now? I didn't know you'd joined the military police force already, too eager to get things real. Perhaps, Itachi said quietly. He just joined for tonight because his father said it would be best for him to experience real missions. On a night like this, people are bound to go out of control. Some spies are going to sneak through our walls to gather information because it will be easy to move around. With many intoxicated by alcohol, this will be a good time for Itachi to learn the kinds of people that are there and learn more about what is right and wrong. Naruto thought about it for a moment before responding. A learning experience, he said. You must be ecstatic to be able to participate in something like that. Shouldn't you wish to join us as well? You will be able to understand the moral responsibility we have as people and be able to differentiate between what is wrong or right. Given your ignorance, it is safe to assume you ignored all those kind of lessons when they were teaching them to you in your clan, Itachi said to Naruto. Military police is for the Uchiha. Besides, I wish to just observe from here. You should come with us. Fugaku-sama said it was okay if you joined us. It is just for tonight anyway. You will be able to observe things from a closer angle, and intervene where you have to. We will be dealing with civilians. They aren't people you can't handle, Shisui intervened in a serious tone. It will be a good inexperience that will teach you what must be done by good people and the energy we must put to protect innocent people in this village. Naruto felt like he had demons running rampant inside his head. This was all just a pain and an echo that wouldn't go away. Where were the days he truly felt compelled to just ignore everything and still not be bothered by it? Ah, how Naruto missed those days. Your sister is going to grow up in this village and this world that surrounds us. Don't you want to see the kind of world it is? If it corrupted, would not wish to correct it so that your sister can live in a safe place. Naruto turned to face Itachi with a smile, eyes closed. That is not very nice, Itachi. It may not be, but it is the truth and you have to see it, Itachi said firmly. If you ignore it, you will only regret it when something bad happens. Naruto looked back into the streets of the village silently. Looks like it is settled then, Shisui said smiling. Come you two, I know a good place where we can start patrolling. Forest of Death. Naruto was strolling through the Forest of the Death, or so they called it. Naruto really didn't get where the name came from. The place didn't stink of death. Sure, at first he'd been frightened a bit coming here when it was dark. There were sounds that just sent chills down his spine and things that just made his hair stand, but now that he has grown used to it, he no longer felt anything. He could even say that he was at home while being in the forest. It was not scary, but just the quiet place he could get some training done. Perhaps he wasn't the one to say the place didn't stink like death. After all, he didn't know anything about death. He had seen people being swatted away by the Kyuubi. He had seen people with looks of dread, but he had never seen anyone die in front of him. A part of his insane self wanted to see what death really looked like. Was it really the beast that people made it out to be, or was it just something adults used to scare children away? In his young life, he had come to learn that adults really liked to use mind tricks in order to get the children to behave. Well, Uzumaki didn't fall for such tricks. Then again, he'd heard very few because he never actually listened to most adults when they speak. It was mostly nonsense that had no use to him. The festival was over with. Perhaps Naruto could say that he'd enjoyed a bit of his life since that fateful day. But things were over. He had to return to work and do his dues. Training was part of his life he couldn't throw away, no matter. There were eyes that were staring at him and a shadow he had to overshadow. Naruto's movements were brought to a complete halt when he sensed something in the change in the air currency. Naruto widened his eyes when a man appeared out of the trees, jumping at him. The look on the man's eyes was just frightening. He seemed crazed. Perhaps he had no sanity to speak of. But that was not what made it possible for the man to wrap his large hands in Naruto's hands. The man had simply been too fast for Naruto to react, given the surprise attack and the fact that the redhead had little chance in reacting quicker than a seasoned shinobi. Naruto struggled to breathe as the man lifted him up into the air, both his hands, trying to pry off the hands that were sucking the air out of his lungs. His legs kicked and kicked as he tried to free himself from the strong hold. He may be an ignorant child, but he knew a prank when he saw one. This man was serious about trying to kill him. He knew his father was hated by his enemies and that some wouldn't waste the chance if it was presented to kill the son of the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto had known this, but he hadn't expected it to happen. Konoha is becoming lax in its security, the man said with a grin on his face. I never thought that the intel could be right. The unknown assailant had received a tip from someone in the village about this little boy. It was said that the redhead usually ventured around this parts of the forest on his own without anyone watching him. The price hadn't been hefty even so. The Yondaime Hokage is known for his kindness. I question that though. His actions during the Third Shinobi World War were not actions of a kind man. Nevertheless, I think I will use you for ransom, the rumbled before shaking his head. It's unlikely that the village would fall to its knees over just an academy boy, even if that boy is the Hokage's son. The leader always puts the village first. The man paused, and held Naruto with just one hand while his right took out a kunai. Naruto hissed as the kunai cut through his right cheek, drawing out blood. The man licked the blood, and smiled maliciously. Tastes good, he said before letting go of the redhead. As Naruto was about to hit the ground, the man suddenly twisted and slammed a brutal kick into the chest of the redhead. When the kick connected with his chest, Naruto felt the air in his lungs escape as he gasped for air before coughing up blood as the kick sent him crashing into a tree. Naruto cried as his back crashed into the tree in brutal fashion. We lost our loved ones during the war. I think it is only fair if the Yondaime loses his son as well, the man said menacingly. Naruto was on his butt, his hands clutching his chest in pain. Something may have been broken when the man kicked him. He was sure of it. He didn't mind his aching back or the blood leaking out of his mouth, his chest hurt more. More worrying was the beat of his heart. He was afraid. The man looked serious. This was pain he was feeling and the man was going to kill him. There was no other way he could look at this. The man wanted to kill him all because he was the Yondaime Hokage's son. Was this it? Had he not swore that he wouldn't find himself in this kind of situation unless he was going to die? He wasn't about to die. Not yet. He still had many years to live. He had yet to become the greatest. He had yet to achieve something. This was reality and Naruto didn't like it. He rejected it. He'd sworn that he would never lose again. This was defeat. It was unacceptable. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't it. He'd vowed to himself. He'd sworn that he would never be pathetic again. He'd sworn that he would never face defeat. He'd sworn that he would never face humiliation again. What was this? What was this? Another defeat. Was he a loser? He was a winner. He was the kid who would rise up from the shadows of the Yondaime Hokage and any shinobi who was a great. He couldn't go out like this. Never. Never. Not in this lifetime. Not when there was still breath in his body. Uzumaki Naruto was a fighter. There were so many thoughts going inside Naruto's head that he went down to his knees, whispering things while the rampant thoughts made his head ache, so much that he had to clutch it while trembling violently. What was happening inside his head was a voice telling him that he was pathetic and weak and for that reason, he was going to die. Naruto was denying that, saying, "No, no, 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 no. Oi, brat, what's wrong with you?" His attacker questioned, walking over to the redhead. "Are you that afraid of dying?" Well, any kid would be in this situation. The moment the man reached him, and grabbed the redhead by his head, trying to get him to face him, a maximum of 6 chakra chains burst forth, catching the man by surprise. The chains pierced through the man's abdomen, lifting him up into the air, while ripping him apart. His screams echoed through the forest in a resounding voice. Perhaps what made it worse were the flames that were lit in all the chains inside his body. They were burning him. To be more literal, they were melting his insides. Naruto looked up to the man who was above him. As he did so, the crimson liquid known as blood gushed all over to his head, rolling down on his face until it was painted in the red mask like his hair. Naruto. Eyes were wide as he looked at the now silent man. Something slapped his face. It was not blood, and it came from the man's gut. His body went cold as his eyes and the chains dispersed. As they did, the man fell into Naruto. The redhead didn't make a sound. He remained still under the heavy body. His body was frozen, his mind numb. Did he? 4 Anbu dropped around the two a few seconds later. Shit. We late. One of them cursed, looking at the scene. Is he okay? Another asked fearfully, looking at the wide-eyed redhead. There was a tense moment because they knew if something had happened to Naruto, it would be war. Slowly, one of the Anbu kneeled down and peeled off the man on top of Naruto. He suppressed the edge to swallow hard when he saw the state of the dead man as he focused on Naruto. There was a sigh of relief when he found the redhead to be okay. He is okay, the masked Anbu said, physically, at least. We better take him to the hospital and someone go inform Hokage-sama. Minato was pacing around in the waiting room of the hospital as the doctors did their checks on Naruto. Kushina was with him in the pacing. Both parents were seriously worried for their son's health. The Anbu had said he is okay, but it was hard to tell because the redhead had been unresponsive and there had been blood all over his body. Only medics could be able to fully ascertain if he was really okay or not. The Sandaime Hokage had a worried look on his face as well. But unlike the two parents, he was sitting down calmly, being able to control his emotions better. At this time, the Sandaime felt like he was the adult here and the two were just children. Well, he could understand, this was their elder son. And for him to experience this kind of thing at this age was really disturbing. He hadn't thought that someone would actually sneak into the village and find Naruto alone. Naruto's movements were not known to the villagers. The redhead was hardly present in the streets of the village when he went about his training ground. Only Anbu actually knew about it and a few others because Naruto was secretive about it. For the information to have leaked outside meant that there was someone from the inside who had leaked the intel to provoke a reaction. The Sandaime hadn't thought that things would move this quickly though. Minato-kun, the Sandaime Hokage called a bit firmly to get Minato's attention. Pacing around will not solve anything. You have to calm down and allow the doctors to do their work. You will only tire yourself. He paused, turning to the mother. You too, Kushina-chan. The redhead Uzumaki turned to face the Sandaime with a look on her face. Don't tell me to calm down, Sarutobi. My son is in there and I don't really know what is happening. I will not calm down. Minato placed a warm hand on Kushina. No need to shout, Kushina, he said softly. This is the hospital. So. Minato blinked twice. He hadn't expected that from Kushina. The Yondaime smiled nervously when Kushina stared at him, waiting for a response. Well, the Sandaime sighed but wisely chose not to say anything in fear that it would only infuriate the woman. An infuriated Kushina was not someone the Sandaime wished to deal with, it wouldn't be good for his health. They didn't wait longer because the doctor came out of the room. She didn't have the look of someone carrying bad news, which was a relief to everyone. You can come in now. Kushina pushed the woman aside as she rushed into the room. Her son was lying on the bed, cleaned of all the blood that had been all over him. But she wasn't relieved when she saw the look on his eyes. He seemed just dead. He didn't even seem to recognize her or even look at her to say that he could see her or sense her. She wanted to cry, but chose not to in front of her son. He is still in shock, but physically, he is all right. There was just a minor cut on his cheek. It will heal. But we would like to keep him here for another day just so we can observe him. We can't really release him while he is like that. The Sandaime Hokage seemed to have been the one who was listening to the woman. Has he responded to attempts for communication? The doctor shook her head. No. The third nodded. At least his life was not in danger, he thought. It would have been truly bad news if the redhead had suffered physically and was wounded mortally. Their reaction to this would be measurable. It was bitterly laughable that he was concerned about physical health instead of mental health. Flesh wounds could heal, but some mental wounds could not heal. This experience would stay with Naruto for the rest of his life. The third was certain of it. The old man left his thoughts and sadly looked at Kushina. Naruto, can you hear me? Kushina asked warmly, her hands over Naruto. The boy didn't respond. His unblinking eyes just continued staring at the empty space in front of him. Minato, the Sandaime said in a stern tone. Let us leave Kushina. Naruto is not in mortal danger. For now, we are not needed here. We need to solve this matter now. It was a pain to the old man to even be saying something like that given the situation, but with Naruto not in danger, Minato was needed somewhere. There were other matters that needed to be handled. If the boy had been in mortal danger, he would be more than willing to allow the parents to deal with it while he saw to the village. But there was no danger and Minato was needed to make strong decisions for the village. Kushina snapped towards the Sandaime. I want the bastard who tried to harm my son. I will be responsible for administering punishment. Minato smiled nervously. Kushina hadn't been told that the man was already dead. She didn't know that Naruto had actually killed someone. She was just briefed of a few details. Not that she had listened to anything further as she stopped listening when she was informed that her son was in the hospital. I will do what I can, Minato said before disappearing along with the Sandaime Hokage. They appeared in the office where they were welcomed by Fugaku and 3 Anbu. Tell me what is going on, the Sandaime demanded as Minato took his seat behind his desk, looking worn out as if he'd been doing some heavy physicals. That man belonged to Iwagakure. At least that is what his headband tells us. We don't know anything further than that, but we can confirm that he was alone. We did a clean sweep with the Anbu and found nothing. Inoichi is busy with his head to find out more details, Fugaku said. The Uchiha wasn't overly disappointed that something like this had happened. He had no doubt that Naruto would survive. The redhead was strong after all and this would only strengthen his resolve to train harder and grow stronger. The Sandaime frowned. I doubt that this was something that Onoki authorized. Likely, one of the Anbu said. The shinobi wasn't that strong. Might have been Chunin or High Chunin at best. Given that he was alone, I can agree with that thought. It's likely that he acted on his own or was being manipulated by someone with knowledge about certain things. I suspect the latter to be the likely scenario, the third said calmly. This will be treated as an S-rank secret. And Naruto will be taken away from the hospital by morning. We can't have the villagers knowing about this. If they find out, they will demand action, Minato said calmly. How was he even able to know where Naruto trained? That is something I was wondering about myself, the Sandaime said. Someone high-ranked must have leaked the information to a nobody because she didn't want Naruto hurt, but to provoke an action from us. The third said. If he had still been Hokage, his former teammates would have been all over him demanding that he take immediate action against Iwagakure. The fact that the man had been wearing an Iwa's headband meant that Onoki was responsible for his actions because he was his subordinate. Demands would be forced to be made, but the third hoped things would go smoothly this time. He didn't want anything to provoke war, not when they still had the wounds of the previous war. 3 shinobi world wars were enough for one old man. He had seen enough. He couldn't survive the 4th. Konoha had just gone through a rampage from the Kyuubi, wasn't it enough? Could it be him? Minato asked. If it is him we won't find anything inside the man's head, the Sandaime said with a frown on his lips. But if we do find evidence, he will have to be brought to account. This is treason at best. The Anbu nodded. We will look for more answers, and we would like to have military police cooperation as well, the man said looking at Fugaku. You have it. Just when the words left the Uchiha's mouth, Inoichi appeared in the office in a puff of smoke. He seemed panicked a bit. Something wrong. The man nodded. He is really from Iwagakure, and was manipulated by someone. Someone did tell him about Naruto's movements and when to strike. When I tried to find out who it was, his mind blew up. No answers then, Minato said flatly. Either way, we must inform Onoki about this. It must be done discreetly as well. We don't want anything happen. Minato was cut off when Danzo burst into the office. I heard what happened and I know it was Iwa Shinobi. A stern action has to be taken to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. Sure doesn't waste time and still informed as always, Fugaku thought. He turned away from the others leaving. He didn't want to be here. He was sure if he stayed longer with Danzo here, he would kill the man. Seriously. Hokages, excuse me, Fugaku said, already on his way out. Danzo narrowed his eyes at the man but refrained from saying anything. Yes, he had the protection of his forces, but it would be stupid to try to piss off the man. Fugaku wasn't an idiot either and he commanded the entire Uchiha army with an iron fist. Those bloody Uchihas couldn't go against him, no matter how hard Danzo tried, they were loyal to their powerful leader. You're quick to catch the wind of everything happening in the village as always, Danzo, Minato said, leaning against his chair, his eyes dancing around the man's form. Really, if he had something to do with the incident, Minato wouldn't stand in the way if Kushina wanted to rip him apart for putting her son into harm's way. I have my means, Danzo said quietly. It is such a disappointment that the Anbu allowed for this to happen. It doesn't say much about our security. If a man was able to get into the village and manage to get his hands on one of Konoha's brightest prospects, it must mean our security is lacking. What would you suggest we do then, Danzo? Sarutobi said, withdrawing his pipe from his robes. He really needed one, especially with Danzo playing it like this. The nerve of his former teammate. Hiruzen had to give it to him though, he wouldn't have shown his face at this time. Not when things just happened. It would be best if some of my men are permitted to move freely around the village as it is apparent that Anbu and the military police force are not enough, Danzo stated calmly. My men are best at anything they do and they would never allow something like this to happen. Really? Minato said slowly. So, if I were to task your men into finding out who leaked the information about Naruto's activities, your men would give the result in, let us just say 2 days at most. I mean real credible information. And if they do, Minato shrugged. I will know that they are effective and next time there is a task that needs to done, I will not hesitate to call on them to do things for me, Minato said. But of course if they don't and if the information happens to be falsified, they give me someone who is framed, I believe that they are incompetent and may be tempted to disband them and have them join the Jonin roster. Danzo's eyes narrowed slightly. Even if he got someone framed for the task and made it look as if the man was the real culprit without Minato discovering it, he wouldn't get what he wanted. Neither of the two were willing to give in. It was rather a surprise that Minato could be so strong even when his son was in the hospital. But it was not a bad thing. If there was such, this was a good surprise. Danzo was happy to know that Minato would not allow petty things such as emotions to stand in the way of his duties as Hokage. The man had shown himself to be soft in the past. The seat of Hokage needed someone who could make strong decisions. It was refreshing to see that the child was growing up. So, this was not a total loss after all. My men will only be called if military police fail to do their jobs and I don't think that Fugaku will appreciate me taking his job from him. It will be best to allow the Uchiha and Anbu to redeem themselves, Danzo put in a reasonable argument that neither Hokages could disagree with. I do hope that a decision will be made on this matter though. We cannot let something like this go unpunished. Young Naruto could be our future Hokage and if we allowed attacks against him to go unpunished, enemies will take advantage of us and think that we have weakened. With what is happening outside, we cannot allow other villages to think that. That said, Danzo turned around to leave. I never thought you'd say something about young Naruto, the Sandaime Hokage said with narrowed eyes. He isn't like the others. There is something special about his eyes and this incident will only strengthen him further. That is if it doesn't break him, Danzo said while standing at the door. He turned to face the two Hokages. It would be a big disappointment if this breaks him. The war hawk walked away after saying those words. The Sandaime let out a bitter chuckle. Still shrewd as ever, he said with a shake of his head. That man never ceases to amaze me. I think if Tobirama-sensei had given him the reins as the third Hokage, he would have subdued the other hidden villages and made himself ruler of the elemental nations. Minato looked at the Sandame for a moment before looking at the door that had closed when Danzo walked away. Good thing you were there and were stronger than him, the Yondaime said to his predecessor. Sarutobi nodded. You should go back to your son, he said. I will finish things here. Minato nodded thankfully before disappearing in a flash of yellow. The Sandame looked at the Anbu and Inoichi. You're dismissed. But don't forget, this is an S-rank secret. No one outside of this room and in the investigation must know, understood? Hi. The professor went on to take the seat Minato had vacated and held his pipe for a moment before putting it back between his lips and looked up into the ceiling. He let loose of a cloud of smoke as he drifted into the back of his head, trying to think of a way to go around things. Hospital. When Minato appeared at the hospital, he found Kushina holding her son's left hand, trying to talk but there was no reaction from Naruto. The blonde smiled sadly as he placed both his hands on Kushina's shoulders. Still no word. Kushina shook her head. It will be all right, Kushina. He will speak to us, the yellow flash said warmly. Let us take him with us. We still have Karen at home, Minato said softly. The following day, Yoshino walked into Naruto's room and found Azumi sitting beside him, trying to get him to eat, but the redhead didn't open his mouth to eat. The old woman frowned at the scene. Really, it was sad to see the boy like this. He had always appeared strong and someone who could take on everything. Then again, killing someone and having their guts spill over your face wasn't just anything. Even some shinobi would have nightmares over it. The woman stood beside Azumi and spoke. Still not moving. He is, Azumi said. Just won't say anything and he doesn't want to eat. I stayed with him all night along with his mother and he did sleep, only for a short while. Didn't seem to be having nightmares though. I see. Yoshino said. I may have been hard on him, but this is the last thing I would have wished for him. Have you seen anyone this young kill anyone? Azumi shook her head. No, I have just read about it. I never thought that Naruto-sama would have his hands bloodied at this stage. He has yet to even become a shinobi, Azumi said in a sad tired tone. It is unfortunate, Yoshino said. But he is a tough kid. He will be fine in a few days. Perhaps even tomorrow. This will change everything though and you will have a tough job on your hands. Can you do it? Anything for Naruto-sama. Yoshino nodded and took the small bowl containing soft porridge from Azumi and gave the teen a stern look. Go wash yourself and get some rest. I will feed him. Don't make me repeat myself, girl. Azumi quickly walked away from the old woman. Yoshino stared at Naruto impassively. What? Not going to give that unnerving smile of yours? She said to the redhead. Naruto said nothing. Is it that old game in which I speak and you ignore me, huh? Yoshino said quietly. Well, I'm used to it. Now, open your mouth so that I can feed you. Naruto didn't respond. I know you don't like me, but what I do is for your sake. I want you to be prepared for the future. My presence is the only thing that can make you wake up quicker anyway. You hate me after all. So for me to get out of your sight sooner, you have to open your mouth and eat, Yoshino said. Naruto still said nothing and Yoshino grew impatient with the redhead. Open your mind or I swear I will release my chakra chains, open your mouth with them and shove this whole bowl down your throat. It took a minute, but Naruto's eyes turned to the old man, cold and just lifeless. He then looked away. Yoshino smiled. This is good progress. I will stay with you and by tomorrow you will be out of your bed, talking like you usually do. Later that day, Itachi was holding Sasuke on his hands, with Shisui on his right side as he stood beside Naruto's bed. Sasuke, this is my friend, Naruto. He is going through some difficult time right now, Itachi said to his younger brother. Shisui just shook his head. I never thought I'd see Naruto like this though, he said looking at the redhead. He did say that the Kyuubi rampage hadn't been anything damaging to him even though he saw it with his own eyes, Itachi said. Perhaps all those emotions he has been bottling up finally exploded inside. Maybe, Shisui said. Or he could be just ignoring us. He does like doing that. This does give him a good excuse to ignore everyone and still get away with it. Well, at least that is what crossed your father's mind. Itachi blinked. The thought had never crossed his mind. Naruto had always looked strong. Nothing ever seemed to get to him. So it wasn't that ridiculous to think he would go that far. Hell, it was even believable. If the redhead suddenly got up from the bed and says I have been just taking a break from this world, Itachi wouldn't look at him skeptically. He would believe it. Itachi looked at Shisui when he felt something. The elder Uchiha had his Mangekyo Sharingan activated. What are you doing? Fixing him. Your father's orders. The Sharingan can be very compelling. I'm just going to force him to deal with what he has to deal with. The elder Uchiha looked at Itachi reassuringly. Don't worry. I'm not trying to manipulate him or doing anything harm. This is just a technique your father taught me. Uchiha compound. With Sasuke put to sleep and Shisui back home, Itachi went up to face his father to ask him about what his friend did to Naruto. He wanted to know about it. Of course, that also revealed that his father knew more about the Mangekyo Sharingan than he let on. Itachi didn't underestimate his father's control over the Dujutsu. It was a known fact that the Uchiha clan head was a master of the eyes, hence the moniker, Fugaku of the Wicked Eye. The Mangekyo was another subject that his father rarely ventured into. Perhaps it was because of the needed sacrifices that one had to go through in order to awaken the final stage of the Sharingan. But that was a part that his father had yet to display. As far as he knew, his father didn't have the Mangekyo and the only person who had it was Shisui, which was why his friend was respected amongst his peers. The Uchiha head clan was working at military police HQ, away from home. Itachi greeted his father calmly before sitting down. There will be a clan meeting tomorrow morning. You have to attend it despite not being a shinobi yet. You're my heir and have already awakened the Sharingan. It is time you started attending them. Shisui has been attending them for some time now. Fugaku was first to speak before Itachi could say anything on the matter that had brought him here. He was always curious about those clan meetings, they were always held in a secret place. He knew because his father had shown him. As the man said, he was the heir of the Uchiha clan. Hi, father, Itachi said to his father with a nod. How did it go with Naruto? He is still not speaking. Itachi fell silent after that, trying to find a good way to ask the question without sounding like he was being suspicious of his father. In all truth, he wasn't, just curious. What did Shisui do, really? There is a level in one's psyche that the Sharingan is able to enter. You know the Yamanaka's abilities, yes? Itachi nodded. He had been told about them. It can act in similar ways, but not as effective. Nevertheless, when people retreat into their mind, it is because they don't want to face the real world, so they will rather stay up in this part of their psyche. Was it the same with Naruto? I can't say, but Shisui did have a conversation with Naruto, Fugaku said. It is not that he didn't want to deal with the real world. He was merely thinking about things, and what he had done. Frightened of what he had done, yes he was, but he was okay. I had Shisui tell him that he did what he in order to survive. If he hadn't done what he did, he would have been killed. Itachi nodded. It was understandable. If Naruto wasn't in the outside, then he had to be in the inside, and the Sharingan was used to bypass that gap that made it impossible for anyone from reaching him. The Sharingan was truly a powerful dujutsu. There was a lot more that it could do with so much potential. Itachi couldn't wait for tomorrow to come so that he could get to work on the dujutsu. He wanted to master it. Will he be okay, then? Fugaku nodded. He should be up and running by tomorrow morning, the elder Uchiha said. Shisui did force him to sleep with his Sharingan, right? Itachi nodded. Good, Fugaku said. Is there anything else? I have a couple of reports I must hand over to Minato by tomorrow. It can wait, Itachi said as he stood up. He excused himself and left the presence of his father, heading back home. The following day. Good morning, mother, Naruto greeted his mother with a smile. The mug on Kushina's hands fell down the floor as she rushed over to her son. Screw the thought that he shouldn't be looking so happy and healthy. She didn't question anything about him. She was just happy that he had woken up and was talking to her. That was what she was looking for. Kushina rushed over to Naruto and engulfed him in a bone-crushing hug, with tears falling down her cheeks. Naruto, I'm so happy you are okay. Naruto awkwardly hugged back his mother, but complained a moment later when it became harder to breathe. I can't breathe, mother. Kushina let go and grinned sheepishly. Sorry, she said. I'm just happy that you're back to the living world. Karen-chan will be happy to see her elder brother again. She has really missed seeing your smiling face. Naruto just smiled. I'm sure she has. Kushina looked at Naruto curiously. Really okay, Naruto. Do you want to talk about it? I was a kunoichi myself, so I know how to handle this. Naruto was honest with his mother. I'm not really sure, he said. I don't want to talk though. What happened happened. I protected myself from being killed. What I need right now is a large meal. I'm feeling rather hungry. I'm sure Chuki has already opened. I can buy you all the bowls you like, she offered with a smile. I will take it, the redhead said. Let me go take Karen, we'll go with her. I can't leave her, Kushina said, rushing away from Naruto to take Karen. As soon as Kushina disappeared, Naruto lost his smile as he walked towards the exit. His bloody chains had killed someone. He had felt the taste of blood with his tongue and had seen the insides of a man. That was the experience. He had won that battle of death. He was alive because he was a winner. If he hadn't done anything, he would have been killed a loser without even realizing his dreams. Such a reality couldn't be accepted. This was the real world. The world that awaited him when he does become a shinobi. Naruto wasn't going to quit. He couldn't allow his sister to experience such things that he experienced. Besides, he still had a dream to achieve. He still had to become the greatest shinobi to have ever lived, first surpassing his father, and then the rest could come. But curse that bloody Sharingan. It left bitterness in him knowing that the damn Dujutsu could poke into his head. The rumors about the Dujutsu being able to control people was true. Naruto could understand was always suspicious about the Uchihas. But of course it didn't mean he was going to follow same path. Naruto's smile returned when his mother came calling for him, thinking he had gone ahead of her. I was just getting some fresh air, mother, Naruto said to his mother. Kushina nodded and handed Karen to Naruto. She noticed that he had hesitated to do it. His hands had been shaking when he did it. But he seemed to adjust himself after a few moments and looked at his younger sister with a different smile. Hello sister, miss me. The little girl smiled as she held out her small hand. Naruto continued smiling. He was happy that she was able to recognize him now. It had been a bitter pill to swallow when she hadn't been able to recognize him a while ago. But now, because he regularly held her, she could recognize him at any time. Come on Naruto, Kushina said, pushing Naruto so that they could make their way out of the compound towards Ikaraku Ramen and help Naruto feast to satisfy his hunger. The three silently made their way into the streets of the Hidden Leaf, fending off the villagers who wanted to see the little Karen. Since she was brought out during her birthday, the villagers had grown fond of her. A few were calling little princess. Despite his ignorance, Naruto noticed that no one seemed to be giving him any look of curiosity and asking him if he was alright. That led him to a conclusion. The incident had been made a secret, as Shisui said the day before. Well, that didn't surprise him at all. It was better this way. He didn't want people knowing that he was already murderer. The moment they reached the ramen, a smiling Minato was waiting for them. Probably left work when he was informed his family was out in the streets with Naruto holding Karen. It was truly remarkable how things change. Some time ago, his father wouldn't have left his responsibilities just to see him. But now the man had run away from work the moment he heard that he was up and running. Well, he could only assume people were worried. When Naruto reached the ramen stand, Minato picked him up from the ground, with Karen still on his hands. It was really a foreign feeling that touched his chest when the man did that while smiling. When was the last time his father had picked him up like that? He'd forgotten how it had made him happy back then. Perhaps now it didn't excite him as it did back then, but it was good to see his father so happy that he was alright. People had really been worried. I'm so happy you are speaking and walking again. I was really beginning to worry that you'd lost your voice, Minato said as he put Naruto on the ground. Really, he had thought of taking the redhead to Inoichi to get him to see if the redhead was willing to talk. Naruto handed the girl in his hands over to his father as he hopped on a stool before responding. It's good to be back in the real world as well. There were so many things to process and consider. The ignorant Uzumaki never thought such would happen. Minato waited until Chuki walked away after taking the orders. I'm really sorry Naruto. I should have protected you. I'm your father. I should have protected you by all means. You shouldn't have gone through that. I know it happened because of Father, Naruto said in a firm tone, yet smiling. There is no need to apologize, And I don't really want to have any mind-shattering thoughts right now. I want to eat and have happy thoughts. Minato smiled sadly and nodded in understanding. Since I'm here, I may as well eat something, the Yondaime said. A couple of hours later, the Sandaime Hokage looked at Naruto with a small smile on his face. About an hour ago, Minato had Naruto taken in for a psychological evaluation, but they said he was okay, and had answered all questions asked him. I hope they didn't ask anything uncomfortable, the Sandaime said to Naruto. The redhead shook his head. It was all right, he said. I'm glad, the Sandaime Hokage said calmly. You don't mind if I ask you some questions, do you? It is about that night. Naruto just stared at the Sandaime for a moment before shaking his head. No word left his lips. Tell me what happened, only if you can. I don't wish for you to relieve a disturbing nightmare that someone your age shouldn't have to experience, but only you can fill in us on what actually happened, the third Hokage said a bit apologetically. Naruto tilted his head to the side, and closed his eyes. When he did open them, it was only partial that the Sandaime couldn't even see them. He kept it like that as he responded in calm words. I was on my way to training and the man just appeared out of nowhere. He assaulted me and when I thought I was going to die, my chains just burst out and then it happened. It was disturbing. Yes, sure the event itself was disturbing. That was no scene Naruto should experience at his age. But that wasn't what the Sandaime Hokage thought to be disturbing. What was disturbing was the part where he didn't feel any emotion from Naruto's tone and he couldn't get a read on the redhead's expression. He realized he had put that look so that he couldn't be read. So it was official, not everything was alright with Naruto. But the fact that those people who had evaluated Naruto said he was okay led to many questions. What would have been truly frightening would be if the redhead had been smiling when he said those words. How are you dealing with it? How am I supposed to deal with it? The Sandaime blinked. There had been emotion when Naruto asked. He seemed genially curious about how to deal with it. The Sandaime Hokage believed that and gave the redhead a warm smile. He stood up and gave Naruto his right hand. Come on. Allow me to show you something. Perhaps you will understand how to deal with this, I hope you do. The two disappeared and appeared atop of the Hokage monument. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He had been thinking that the old man was thinking of taking him someplace secret or any other place he didn't know. He didn't say anything though. He just dimly looked at the village bellow as the Sandaime began speaking. For the third shinobi war to end, your father had to kill many people. Yes, your father has killed. So have I. That is the life of a shinobi, the life you're going to grow into. This village would have been in ruins if it hadn't been for your father. The fact that he could kill an army on his own in less than 2 minutes made our opponents realize that if they continued fighting, they would only be fighting death. And so they accepted the peace treaty I had been trying to have them sign. Many shinobi have killed as well because there is something they must protect. This village is standing because some people fought and yes, there was bloodshed. This is not the kind of a world I wish for. I do wish for a world where people can be able to talk to solve things rather than resorting to bloodshed. But as things stand, that world is out of reach and at my old age, there is little I can do. My former student Orochimaru was kidnapping children from around the village, experimenting on them. Many of them died. So many parents lost their children because of him. Yet, when I was faced with him, I couldn't stop him. I let him go. The correct thing I should have done was to kill him. And do you know what, Naruto? I regret not having killed him. Naruto seemed to think about it. He tilted his head to the side, scratching his temple as he worked hard to think. Why? He finally said. Because I know right now many more people are suffering because of him. He is killing more people and making more parents suffer losses for his own wicked ways, Hiruzen said bitterly. The bitterness was not lost to Naruto. Sometimes to stop bad things from happening, we must do what must be done. I should have killed Orochimaru to stop people from suffering. Perhaps someone would miss him, but he is the kind of person who shouldn't be allowed to live amongst society. The Sandaime paused for a moment to allow Naruto to digest what he'd said. This village has to be protected. Our own lives have to be protected, because they are precious. We must uphold the moral responsibility and scorn amoral actions. For this village to survive, for us to live peacefully, we must do as right and what must be done. Naruto sat down. This was all too much to remain standing while listening. He looked confused for a couple of moments before asking, "What is this moral responsibility you people always speak about? I have been taught the right and wrong by both Shisui and Itachi. What is the responsibility towards it?" The professor smiled as he followed Naruto's example by sitting down. "I guess this is any good chance to teach you this. Listen carefully though, or you might miss something." Later, Uzumaki compound. Minato walked towards his special training ground in the Uzumaki compound and found Naruto kicking and punching a dummy. He chose to observe the redhead tire himself out while training. This way, he could see what was wrong with his style and how good his son had become with taijutsu. This was actually the first time he was seeing his son fighting. Their only times they met in the training ground was when they were both trying to learn how to infuse an element into their Rasengan. Creating a jutsu with what Naruto hadn't been really easy as the redhead had thought it would be. Minato had been happy that his son had an idea similar to his. But to make it work, he had taught Naruto the Rasengan. With the help of clones, his son learned it quickly and they began to work on putting elemental chakra into their jutsu. He was infusing wind while Naruto infused fire. They were making progress. Naruto finally took notice of his father and turned to the man with a tired look on his face. Minato beat the redhead to the first words. "I thought you'd never use this training ground for this kind of training." Minato flinched when Naruto gave his response. "With what happened in the Forest of Death, I'd rather not go back there alone. For now, I will do things on my own here. No one can disturb me anyway, and it's safe." "It is," Minato said. "Between you and Itachi, who is fast?" "Itachi," Naruto said. "Thought as much." Minato said calmly. "What are you really doing with Fugaku?" "Ninjutsu and Kenjutsu. He does teach me a bit of taijutsu, but he doesn't do much because he said his style wouldn't suit me and it was only for Uchihas." Minato nodded. "Understandable," he said. "You're slow. Too slow. You need to increase your speed to have more fluidity when you fight. Without speed, you cannot make a move without your opponent seeing it. One of the reason I have been successful as a shinobi is that I have been able to make moves without any shinobi realizing it, all owed to my speed." Naruto stared at his father for a few moments. He had really suppressed all urges to learn from his father. But now he could see that he had been just stupid. He was looking at things the wrong way. There was so much that he could learn from his father without even copying his moves. "A day ago I was wondering if I could really surpass you. You are a shinobi ranked flea on sight in the bingo books. I wonder, can I surpass that? You're an excellent shinobi all round and the mind you possess, I envy it." Minato walked closer to Naruto and kneeled in front of him. "If there is someone who can surpass me, it is you. You're my son, after all. I believe that you can do it. We are all different and have something unique about us. Find that something special about you and you will do great things." Naruto nodded. "There are so many powerful people out there. I never actually took things seriously. I've come to realize that there are truly powerful people and that I still have a long way to go to cover the gap," Naruto said. "Who have you discovered to be strong?" "Fugaku," Naruto said a bit seriously. Even Itachi has admitted that no matter how strong he becomes, he wouldn't want to fight his father. He is really strong. There are only a handful of shinobi who can actually match him. Within the head clans, he is actually the strongest, and if it hadn't been for the politics that surrounded the Uchiha clan, he may have been become Hokage, Minato explained, knowing that his son probably didn't know about this information. "Uchihas can easily become powerful, huh?" Minato nodded. "But just because you're not Uchiha and don't have the Sharingan doesn't mean that you can't be strong. Look at the Sandaime Hokage. He had no bloodline, and yet during his prime years, he had no rival. It all depends on how far you are willing to take it. If you have the will and determination to succeed, you will," the Yondaime smiled. "But you have all that, don't you, son?" Naruto nodded. "If you need help, I can help you increase your speed and improve your taijutsu. Aside from the Hiraishin, my natural speed is also great." Naruto looked up for a moment thinking over things. "I'd like it if you could," he said with a smile. Minato's smile widened as he retrieved his special kunai from his pouch and handed it to Naruto. "This is the Hiraishin kunai. If you are facing trouble and need me, just throw it to the ground and I'll be there for you." Naruto pocketed the kunai with a smile. We can begin with that training now. But after today, I will create a schedule on when we will meet. Due to my duties, we can't meet every day, Minato said, to which Naruto nodded in understanding. Minato then slapped seals on Naruto's legs and hands. When he did the ones in the hands, Naruto fell down on his face due to the weight they possessed. Minato laughed as he helped Naruto get up. Weight seals, he explained. Create a clone and go to what you were doing, throwing kicks and punches so that you can grow used to the weights. When you can move freely, I will increase the weights. Eventually you will see the difference. Naruto looked confused for a few moments, but he didn't ask anything from his father. He merely turned away from the man and carried his heavy body towards the dummy he had been smacking around. He got the feeling that once he got used to the weights, his body would grow lighter, or perhaps he would be able to carry it a lot easier. Minato turned to the clone. I will begin taijutsu after you get used to that weight. For now, I want to teach you the body flicker technique. Once you become fast enough, the body flicker will enhance your speed greatly and give you free flow of movements. Weeks later, Hokage office. Takada walked into the Hokage's office with a smile on his face. He was a happy man. It was rare that one got to teach a genius like Uchiha Itachi and someone unique as Naruto was. The latter may not have been paying attention to his lessons and may have ignored most things that happened in his class, but when it was asked who the boy's sensei was, people would point at him. They would look at him as the sensei who sat with the students in his class and taught them on a daily basis. He was aware that his classes may not have done much for the two and that it was their own efforts that saw them become what they have become. The two were truly on a level beyond other students and would be on this level even without him. He had no say in their development event, though he was their sensei. Well, he had taught Naruto something useful and the redhead had even thanked him for it. That was the lesson, that he should take advantage of the resources available to him and learn quickly, as he was a privileged student who was from a prestigious clan. Hokage-sama, the man greeted the famed Hokage as he entered the office, with 2 files on his hands. Takaka-san, Minato said to the academy teacher with a small smile on his face. Is it that time of the year already? Hi, Hokage-sama, the man responded with a nod. Minato nodded and told the man to sit down, which he did gratefully. What is the good and bad news of the academy? It was around that time of the year when the man would be giving him some good and bad news on the academy, for the whole year. Minato was sure there wouldn't be any bad news this year. The academy had been fairly managed and they had managed to keep things tight with the recent war having just walked past them. They wanted the younger generation to grow up healthy and not burdened by the thought of another war occurring in their backyard. Minato was beginning to think that they would not be able to shield the younger ones for much longer, though. Things were beginning to look tight, and one mistake from someone, things would go out of control. Konoha would always to try to talk things out. His village would not be the one to start the fighting this time. The history pointed many damning fingers in the hidden leaf, and Minato couldn't hide from that dark history. Well, he had the Sandaime Hokage in his corner to support him and take the lead in negotiations should things come to that point. There is no bad news from the academy this year, Hokage-sama, Takada said, smiling. Many parents were happy with our choice to leave the war out of our curriculum this year. Nobody really wanted their kids to be exposed to such cruelty. The Kyuubi rampage strengthened the need to think more positively, the man explained. Minato nodded. Some people hadn't been happy though. People like Danzo and the former advisors to the Hokage had been displeased. They thought the Kyuubi rampage emphasized the need for the kids to be trained harsher under the War and Emergency Act. They wanted the next generation to be ready for war at any times. But the Sandaime had stood firm along with him in that they would not be making the same mistakes as they did in the past, and there was no need to rob children of their childhoods. Well, things had worked out for the better. It pleased him more importantly. The villagers' children's childhoods were not stolen. Under an War and Emergency Act, they would have been forced to enter the academy at the age of 5 and go through intense training in the hands of seasoned jonins rather than the current roster of teachers at the academy. The other parents were happy as well. Perhaps the choice had even improved his ratings amongst the villagers. Some had been skeptical when the Sandaime Hokage chose him as the Yondaime Hokage. But things had improved after the Third World War and the people had loved him as their hero. That is something to smile about, Minato said to the man. What is the good news then? Takada considered his options for a moment before speaking as he handed Minato the files on his hands. Uchiha Itachi and Uzumaki Naruto. I grant them my approval to take the special exam and graduate from the academy. There is nothing the academy can teach them anymore. Keeping them there would be only holding them back. For their development, I think it is best to allow them to graduate. Minato frowned, inwardly, but outside he let out a smile. Your best students. The academy teacher shook his head. No offense meant, Hokage-sama, but Itachi was my best student. Naruto was almost impossible to deal with. He didn't listen at class, and actually went as far as to forget doing homework. If anything, he was the worst student, but I cannot take anything from his grades, he was excellent. Perhaps the lack of focus was because things were easy and that he wasn't learning anything from classes. Still, the same could be said about Itachi, but he listened in class, did his homeworks, and helped others when asked. Of course, the two had a share of enemies, but they handled things well. Still, I would say the award for best student goes to Itachi because of his attitude. What he failed to mention was that after the incident that resulted in the redhead killing someone, Naruto had become a bit withdrawn and sometimes hadn't shown up in class. Minato seemed amused. Naruto was like that, huh? The Hokage said. Thank you, Takada-san. I will look at this and make a decision before end week. If I decide they should take the exam, I will have them do it here in my office. I don't think there is a need for them to do it though. They will just ace it. Their stats say that much. But for formalities we might go through it. Takada nodded. I would be happy to see them make their families proud, the man said as he stood up, and he really didn't want to spend another year with Naruto in his class. The redhead was a bad influence to other students and hard to deal with. I will make sure I make a decision that will be good for their development, Minato said as the academy teacher walked away from his office. Once the man was out, Minato's frown came out of play. He really didn't want to make a choice on Naruto. Fugaku would be more than happy that his son would be leaving the academy to do things freely and become a shinobi. The man wanted his son to grow as soon as possible. Well, he had the interests of his clan at heart. And it didn't look like Itachi was against the fast-tracked growth. Minato held out his right hand and an Anbu appeared out of nowhere. Get me Uchiha Fugaku. Request his presence. Tell him it is a matter of importance. The Anbu said nothing. He merely nodded and disappeared in the same way he appeared. Minato had to think about what he was going to do with Naruto. He couldn't allow his son to go out there, not now. He was still young, too young to be leaving the village's gates. He needed the boy remain inside the village until he grew up a bit. The Yondaime Hokage understood that Naruto had already lost his innocence because of that incident. Thinking about it made him fume. He had failed to protect his son. What kind of a father was he? His son had gone through that experience under his watch, when he had hundreds of Anbu under his command. He had failed both Rin and Obito, and now it was Naruto. Even so, he couldn't allow his son be exposed to more cruelty of the shinobi world anytime soon. He needed his son to regain his happiness while inside this village before going out there to face the world. For now, Naruto had to remain in the village. He didn't care if Naruto had to hate him for it. This was what a parent could do for his son. Minato looked up as a surprised Fugaku appeared within the office along with the Anbu. Minato dismissed the Anbu before Fugaku spoke. It must be urgent for you to actually summon me, Fugaku said. He hadn't been summoned, he knew that. But he didn't think that the Anbu would have left easily when given the command by the Hokage, even when the masked man knew who he was dealing with. No need to give me that look, Minato said to Fugaku with a wave of his right hand. He then placed both his hands on his desk and stared at the Uchiha straight into his eyes. I was given a report from the academy. Your son and mine are no longer suitable for the Shinobi Academy. The academy is too small for them. Fugaku smiled. Finally, he said, I have been waiting for this. Now my son will no longer have anything limiting his growth. He can save all his efforts for his training rather than the academy. At this stage, the academy has no use for him. It is just a waste of time. That was something that Itachi had come short of saying, but Naruto didn't have such preservations. He had said it out loud. Of course, the Uchiha clan head wasn't going to say it to Minato at this time. The man was probably stuck trying to figure out what to do with Naruto's case. He was sure without doubt that Naruto wouldn't want to return to the academy. That aside, Fugaku was truly glad that he would be able to take Itachi out of the village once more. His son needed to mature his Sharingan and follow the examples of Shisui. He already had a plan on how to get Itachi's Sharingan to evolve like Shisui's, so it was best that he leave the academy before something like that happens. So you have no objections with Itachi leaving the academy so far, Minato stated calmly. He had expected it. Perhaps the hopeful side of him had wished that the man would say Itachi could still spend one more year at the academy. That would of course make things easier for Naruto and the choice he was about to make. Did you expect anything else? Minato shook his head. Itachi will get his exam in a week. I will decide on which team I will place him next year when I have the time to look at all teams. This December and beginning January, you can have him to yourself. Fugaku didn't smile at that. It didn't make him a happy man. He wanted to be the one to groom Itachi, not the other way around. There was no other better teacher for his son other than him, and he was hoping that Minato would see what he truly wanted on that matter. They usually had an understanding on most things, but of course not everything. I'd hope that you would be willing to allow Itachi be in my care, Fugaku said calmly, with an expressionless look on his face. Really, nothing would please him more. But he also understood that Minato had a responsibility, and as a Hokage, the only choice he had to take was assign Itachi to a team under a Jonin. Everyone else expected that. No one would object to it. What people would call favoritism would be if he was allowed to keep Itachi to himself. Even so, Fugaku hoped the Hokage would come to a compromise with him. No, that cannot happen, Fugaku, Minato said in a very Hokage tone. Once Itachi graduates, he will become a shinobi of Konoha. Rank aside, all shinobi answer to me, and there will be no exception to that rule. Minato was dead serious about this, Fugaku realized. At least give him a sensei that will be good for him. You don't need to tell me that, Minato said. When I make team placements, I must consider all facts. His development isn't the only issue I must consider. Depending on which side I think is best, I will make a decision. Fugaku frowned. He knew from that Itachi wasn't going to get a sensei who would be stronger enough for his standards. But there was really nothing he could do about it. Minato was the Hokage and he was still a Jonin of Konoha despite all his other positions. It isn't that I want to make things difficult for you, Fugaku. You must understand where your village stands with the villagers. You don't want things to seem like you are influencing my decisions, Minato said. Fugaku could have no complaints with that said. He understood the situation better than anyone. If people start thinking that we are influencing you, they might think that we are controlling you with the Sharingan, he said. That really left a bitter taste in his mouth. It doesn't have to be true for people to take it seriously. And within a few days, my clan will be getting nasty eyes. Minato nodded. This is why sometimes I must take decisions that are not favorable to you. You can't always have your way, the Hokage said. The Sharingan's power will always be subject to suspicion, but we can limit that and show the village that you're trustworthy. Fugaku sighed. He wasn't going to get what he wanted. Well, it isn't like he will be spending all day in the team. I will still have my time with him, Fugaku said in a resigned tone. What about Naruto? He won't be leaving the village anytime soon. This is why I will not allow him any team. However, I have a request from you. What? Allow Naruto into the military police force. It will confine him in the village and still won't stand in his way for development. Fugaku stared at Minato for a few moments before responding. You do understand what you're asking me, right? Minato nodded. I will handle all questions for the other clan heads, and the Uzumaki might be displeased, but they will see reason. Before anything, Naruto is my son and no one will be telling me what is best for him when I can see the truth before my eyes, the Yondaime Hokage said seriously. I don't know, Fugaku said a bit purposefully. I will be breaking tradition. Really? It wouldn't be for the first time that Naruto does military police force duty. Your clan respects you. They left Kakashi alone because you spoke, and if you have them see reason, they will listen to you. You're not giving me anything, the military police force head said with a shake of his head. I'd thought you'd make a promise of something. Minato smiled. This isn't something that you haven't thought about before. Besides, I can still get Naruto into a team and keep him genin for the next 5 years, but soothe his soul by having experienced shinobi take their time to teach him while he isn't with his team. Fine, Fugaku said. The thought did cross my mind, he said. I will see to it, and this will give me a chance to observe him closely. Minato smiled. Thank you, he said. Fugaku merely nodded and walked away. With the man gone, Minato called an Anbu once again. He had the Anbu find Naruto and bring him to him. It took a few minutes, but the Anbu did return his eldest child and Minato braced himself when his eyes met with his son's. I did not disturb you, did I? Naruto shook his head. Listen, Naruto. I know you have been having a lot to deal with in the past couple of months, but I have received a report and a recommendation from your sensei that both you and Itachi be allowed to take the special graduation exam. As a Hokage, this is good news, and as a father, I'm really proud of you. But I don't want you to leave the academy just yet. Naruto frowned. Why? I think you're still too young, and for a father, I think it is only best you remain at the academy for just 1 more year. After that, I won't get in your way. I just need you to rediscover yourself once more before entering into the shinobi world. Naruto shook his head. I'm fine, father, and I would really be happy if you allow me to take the special exam. Besides, he only sent a clone to the academy. Yes, some days he did go himself, but he didn't want to be regarded as an academy brat anymore. He knew that Itachi would be allowed to branch out. His father was only saying this to him because he still saw him as a little kid who still needed to be protected, and that incident had really shocked the man to the core. His father had apologized so many times for failing to protect him, but Naruto wasn't going to allow the man to stand in the way of his rise. He needed to leave the academy in order to grow up. If he remained at the academy, he would be left behind by Itachi. The Uchiha would rank up quickly and become a light that would overshadow him, the academy student. Naruto couldn't have that. He needed to leave the academy. 1 more at that place and he would lose it. Minato smiled sadly. Would you hate me if you denied you the chance? I don't know, Naruto said. Maybe I would, but I would rather you didn't. I would be at most displeased that I wouldn't want to live in the same roof as you. Minato's sad smile turned into a frown. Naruto was saying he would leave home. That was the last thing Minato wanted. He didn't know what he would do if Naruto left the Uzumaki compound. Kushina would be heartbroken. And if you did, I don't think I would feel compelled to go back to the academy. It was my choice to go, and I think it will be my choice if I decide I no longer wish to go. This was the response that Minato had expected from his son. He sighed. Well, he had tried and there was really no other choice. You will take the exam with Itachi, but you will not be assigned to a team like Itachi. You will, however, be drafted to the military police forces roster until I decide otherwise. Your growth will not be stunted, but you will not be allowed to leave the village until I think you're strong enough. Naruto's frown deepened and he stared at his father. Why are you doing this to me? Minato got up from his chair and walked up to Naruto. He kneeled down on the side of his son and looked at him sadly. Naruto, you are my son. You cannot run away from that. Because of my sins, people will be looking to harm you as that man tried to do. I could not forgive myself, and Kushina would not be the same person if I allowed you to go out of the village where there are people who want to kill you. You must first be ready. Strong enough before you can leave. Do you understand this, Naruto? It would be a blatant lie if Naruto said he couldn't see where the man was coming from. But there was something inside of him that told him to ignore logic and rationality. Minato was his father, and what he had said was right. The man had even fallen short of telling him that the only reason he wasn't killed or kidnapped in that incident was because he had caught the man by surprise. The man had been expecting an academy student, not a brat who could manifest chakra chains. His life would be in constant danger if he was out there in the village. Naruto understood that. He understood that he needed to be a lot stronger if he was going to defend himself. He knew he still had a lot to do in order to reach the level of the likes of Shisui. There was still a lot more to do. Nevertheless, this didn't make this any easy to take in. His father was only doing this for him, and Naruto understood it. Perhaps if it had been 2 months ago, he wouldn't have thought of it this way. He would have remained ignorant and say his father was standing in his way. Naruto closed his eyes and looked at his father once again. He smiled and turned away from the man. He left the office without saying a word. There was nothing really he could say to his father, and he hoped the man could understand, as he was also expecting him to understand the situation before him. Minato allowed Naruto to walk away without saying anything. He went back to his chair behind his desk and sat comfortably before speaking. You can come out now, Jiraiya-sensei. The legendary Toad Sage jumped through the open window and took his rightful position, smiling at his former student. When did you notice I was here? I'm not a kid anymore, sensei. I'm a cage-level shinobi. Sensing you at this position isn't a difficult thing, Minato said to the Toad Sage. I'm glad you're back though. It has been rather long since we last spoke. How have you been? Good. You. Surviving, Minato said, looking at his former sensei. He has grown, huh? Jiraiya said of Naruto. The last time the Sannin saw the redhead was a year ago, but the boy seemed to have grown like it has been years since he last saw him. Well, with what he was getting, it was to be expected. Yes, a bit too quick for my liking. But he is okay. He isn't like how Kakashi was when he was younger. Minato managed to smile about that. Though, I do worry about his mental health. He did have the redhead go through a psychological evaluation, but they said there was nothing wrong with him. Naruto would still go through another one to see if he is fit to become a shinobi. Minato had hoped that they would find something wrong. He could have understood that. But when they said was wrong, he thought that evaluation was wrong. Naruto had killed someone. He had gone through some stages that showed it had affected him greatly, but Minato had expected it to bother him for months. Jiraiya smiled sadly. I read your report. It was unfortunate that he had to go through that at his age, the Sannin said. Considering that he was a bright and happy kid before the Kyuubi incident, I'd say it was really unfortunate. But it happened. We just have to guide him. He paused, grinning slightly. I think you handled that well though, and I do agree with your choice. Naruto had already lost his innocence, but outside wouldn't rob him of that, it would take his life. There was no rational argument that one could give to challenge Minato's choice. The only occasion Naruto was supposed to leave the village was when he was with seasoned shinobi who could protect themselves and him against the dangers. I just hope he doesn't end up hating me for it, Minato said sadly. He won't, Jiraiya said firmly. Maybe I can have a crack at him during the days I will be in the village. Have you talked to him about the Toad contract? Minato shook his head. Not my place. You're the contract holder. If anyone has to do it, it is you. I have no objections over it though, the Yondaime said. Have you found anything about Orochimaru? Jiraiya frowned. No, he said. I can't find him anywhere. His tracks are well covered, but I will eventually find him. The Sannin said firmly. We will talk other matters later. I have to talk to Sensei and hit the hot springs later on. Minato shook his head as the man disappeared in a puff of smoke.